Let's get sweaty.
Hello and welcome to the Shenmue Dojo Show, Season 5, Episode 3, entitled Under the Influence of Shenmue. Of course, fresh off the news that Shenmue is the BAFTA award-winning, most influential video game of all time, and rightly so. Anyways, I am Skilljim, and today I'm joined by the BAFTA award winner for the most YouTube members-only videos uploaded in a single day of all time, Matthew Oliver. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah, good man. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Yeah, not too bad at all, actually, after the old BAFTA win for Shenmue there.
Oh, you know, it's just a casual BAFTA win, isn't it? It's quite nice.
Feels good. Yeah, we do have most years.
Yeah, you know.
Nothing out of the norm.
No, I mean, we'll come on to it in a bit, but I'm still a little bit in shock with it all.
Same.
But I mean, it's just insane. Absolutely insane. Great news. Great news for Shenmue and everything else.
Very, very good news. Definitely, yeah. But like you say, we will come on to it in a little bit. But first, Matt, what have you been up to recently?
So in the last month, I had a month off work because I finished. Well, I say finished. I got made redundant from a previous job. Had to have a month off as per the conditions of my redundancy. So I had the whole of March off work. So you probably noticed the amount of members' videos coming out left, right, and centre. I think I averaged on the end of it a video every other day. I think it was by the end of March. I think I did like 16 or 17 videos.
Okay, yeah. There was a lot.
It was a lot. It was very full on, but it was a very deliberate decision because it's obviously going to benefit us when my little one arrives.
Yeah. Of course, it's a very intelligent thing to do. Get all that content sort of preloaded and ready to go. And you don't have to leave everything to last minute like me and whip things up at 4 a.m, I guess. Although you'd probably be doing that anyway.
Wow, I might well be just up anyway, dealing with a little one needing feeding or whatever. So, yeah, I spent March doing that, gaming, chilling out, and then started my new job a week ago as we record this, which is a bit of a culture shock going back to work after a month. But yeah, all good. What about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. But just before I talk about myself, are you excited about the little one coming then? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
How have you sort of prepared for what's about to go down?
Well, my old office is now the nursery. We've got everything in there, barring one thing, which is a nursing chair, which will be turning up imminently. So that's all good. We're doing our antenatal classes at the moment. The wife's getting much more pregnant. The bump's getting a lot bigger. So just having to keep an eye on her as well, because obviously the bigger she gets, the harder it's for her to do things and move about and everything else. But I'd say we're as prepared as we can be. I mean, we're both very excited about it, but I don't think anybody's ever prepared for a baby to arrive, are they? So
no.
As prepared as we think we are, we'll find out come whenever she turns up.
Exactly. Like these shows, mate, you just have to just wing it, mate. You just things just fall into place. Like I never thought I would ever be ready for a child. Something I've never really wanted to have for the longest time. It was only, obviously she's 5 now, but up until 5 years ago, we were pretty much adamant that we weren't going to have a kid. And then just one day we just had a little chat and out pops a baby.
Yeah, you are.
That's how the birds and the bees work, I guess. But yeah, it is probably the greatest thing I've done. Not to encourage anyone that might be on the fence about having a baby to have a baby, but she's awesome. So it's definitely a life-changing decision. But as long as she doesn't turn into a murderer or something.
Well, that'd be all right. I mean, the intention I have is by 6 months she'll be typing and making videos for me, and I can retire.
Exactly. Yeah, get to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not that we encourage child labour either, but
no, of course we don't.
It's not too bad when it's your own child, I suppose. Legally speaking, maybe, I don't know.
Careful, we'll get hunted down.
Yeah. But me, it's not a lot really. To be honest, I haven't got as much to talk about. Just work. Been working as usual, working away on the main site for what we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Oh yes,
Artwork release, of course. Everyone knows what that is now. Well, I hope so.
I'd hope so.
If not, when we get to that in the news section, you were in for a treat anyway. A little bit of Superpass stuff I've been working on recently. Not too much, but should be another update out soonish, I guess.
Awesome.
I'm still playing a bit of Balatro, Turtle WoW that I mentioned last time.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, not really been playing many games. Just not had the time, and it's a common excuse, I suppose, for a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
Just not got the time. Prior to the show, I was actually watching the BAFTA awards through Easy Allies' reaction.
Oh yeah.
Which was quite enjoyable, actually. I was pleasantly surprised. These award shows, the Game Awards obviously is the other one that's like the big one, can be boring. Obviously, mainly there to see the new game announcements, whereas the BAFTA Awards is just awards, so I didn't know if it was going to be enjoyable or not, but actually it is quite. The guy that's hosting it, that Phil Wang, he's quite funny, makes some nice video game related jokes, which helps. Just a nice sort of enjoyable watch. Celebration of games. Obviously, Shenmue didn't really get a mention. Huber, actually, he did mention it in the pre-show before the BAFTAs kicked off for them.
Oh, did
which
he?
was nice to hear, yeah. To have a few groans from Bloodworth and Isla.
Oh.
But I think Huber represented Shenmue quite well there. He was saying how influential it has to be there because, maybe not number one, but it definitely is really, really up there because of what it has actually done for the gaming industry.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the reaction. I think people can argue the toss over the top 10 or whatever because there's always going to be some level of influence more to other games than others from different parties, different people are interested. But you can't deny what Shenmue did, even if you don't think it was number one. A lot of AAA games borrowed from Shenmue. Shenmue is very much the foundation of what modern AAAs are. And I think in the games industry, it's very much recognized that way. I think in gamers, maybe not so much, but that's also part of the reason we're doing this show, isn't it? To maybe just point people in the right direction a little bit.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mentioned this now, actually. It's a good segue, but today's show, we're going to actually be piggybacking off the news of Shenmue winning a BAFTA for the most influential video game of all time by sort of thinking about the qualities of the game that could be considered something influential. I'm also going to have a think about some of the games that we feel have clearly been influenced by Shenmue. We've got a few quotes from developers as well, citing Shenmue and Yu Suzuki as sort of big influences on their own game. So that is today's show in a nutshell, sort of hoping that it'll be like a good, well-rounded show to sort of say why Shenmue is such an influential game and why potentially it's won this BAFTA award, or at least been recognised by the team over at BAFTA, which is awesome, by the way, to get that under a belt. And I suppose that's a nice segue into the news section, Matt. So we're going to kick off the news with obviously the big news. Tell us a little bit more about this BAFTA thing, then, Matt.
Wow. So I want to say February time. BAFTA, who, for those who don't know, it's a British awards organisation. They do films, games, TV show awards a lot. In terms of TV shows and movies and games, and certainly in Britain, I think in Europe it's one of the bigger awards. And certainly in gaming, I'd probably only argue the Game Awards are probably the ones that are bigger in terms of carrying a level of weight. I think with BAFTA, because it's voted by a committee, it's slightly different, generally speaking. But anyway, they put out in February a public poll going, right, we want to know what you think is the most influential video game of all time. So I want to say Kid Marine mentioned this in the Discord. I could be remembering the person wrong, so if I am, I apologise. Popped it in our Discord and said, yeah, this could be something for Shenmue to get on board, and yeah, it's a public vote, so why not? So Shenmue fans clearly like a public vote, got on board with it, but I think it went wider than just the Shenmue community. I think other people got involved with it and actually started putting Shenmue down in terms of people who work in the games industry recognize that sort of level of influence. And we all thought, you know what, if it makes the list somewhere, gets an honourable mention, that's really good publicity for Shenmue. It's the whole point, because the more publicity it gets, the more chance we have of a Shenmue 4 happening. So you then turn up to what is about a week and a half ago now, and I get a message at probably about 1 a.m. going, Shenmue's won. I mean, what do you mean Shenmue's won? You're taking the piss, aren't you? Read the article. Holy shit, Shenmue's won. And it just spiraled from there, didn't it? Every gaming outlet had it. I think it caused a little bit of controversy, because I think there was a number of people who were like, how can Shenmue be the most influential video game of all time? Now, you can argue the toss over that to a point with other games that were probably omitted from that list. Also, you have to recognise that why is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 in there? With all due respect, it's a 2 to 3 month old game. So there's always a level with these public polls, I think, maybe get a bit skewed in some aspects. But if you certainly speak to game developers, a lot of them put Shenmue in their top 10 influential games of all time. They just will. Gamers, not so much, and I think that's where the furore comes from here a little bit. A lot of probably more modern gamers who don't know what Shenmue is don't understand what it actually brought to the table in terms of the systems that were in the game, the full motion capture, the world building, the fact you could pick up items, and it was essentially the grounding for what we use for AAA games now in terms of the formula, the sandbox, the world, everything. So from Shenmue's perspective, it was insane because it's gone on every gaming outlet out there. Like, everyone ran a story on it. Everyone. And in the UK, ended up on ITV Evening News, for goodness sake.
I know. Yeah, it's done so well, you know. I think we counted 44 articles the other night, and I think people just misconstrued the results of the poll, and obviously whatever the word influence, as a lot of people didn't seem to grasp the definition of that word, I don't think. And obviously you gamers might expect Tetris, Pong, etc. to be in there because obviously they came first in a way and influenced video games forever. But if you're talking about, say, the modern day gamer, the type of game that they play today, like these big open world sandbox games that you speak about, from Ghost of Tsushima, Cyberpunk, any of these open world games that have had some sort of an influence, that influence originated in Shenmue, essentially, from some of the concepts that were sort of, again, not so much first time produced for Shenmue, but Shenmue did them so well that it sort of bridged that gap between the, probably not the best word, retro, but the retro games that came before Shenmue. It sort of was the catalyst to bring forth the explosion of open world games beyond Shenmue and onwards, if you know what I mean, for the future of video gaming forever. Shenmue's sort of slap bang in the middle. You've got these classic games, and then you've got these quote unquote open world modern-ish games, and Shenmue's sort of like the middle of two bookends almost. Yeah, quite. And I think the point you made there around influence to what people think is a good game very much got lost, I think, in translation. There's people going, well, Shenmue's not a good game. Well, whether you think it's a good game or not, that's not the question. The question was the biggest influenced game, what the biggest influenced games out there. So whether you like Shenmue or not, and there's some very strong opinions on either side of the fence with this one, you can't deny it had a big influence on the games that we play today. I mean, someone put it as said, you owe all the open world games owe Shenmue. That someone put that on Twitter, and that is something I would agree with. Now, a lot of open world games would have taken what Shenmue did, built on them, did some things better, changed some things up. That's what happens. That's evolution. That's normal. But it's like the blueprint, right? Shenmue's the blueprint for those games to come.
And as we get later on into the show and the actual main topic, you will see that actually many people still hold Shenmue as a massive influence into the games that are made today, and continues to be an influence for games today. But the biggest thing for it with all of this was how big it went. It went bigger than the Times Square stunt, which I couldn't believe. So the amount of positive publicity this has had, surely that then puts us in a position that maybe a company or somebody looks at this and goes, do you know what? There's something behind this now. and gives Wisenet or whoever a bargaining chip, or maybe brings those people that maybe have been a little bit far away from each other in terms of a business deal that ever bit closer, and maybe, just maybe, it pushes things forward. We don't know. It may have no impact whatsoever. I don't believe that. I think that's going to bring some people to the table. But in terms of an opportunity, the community can't now let up. Because of this, we had the biggest tweetathon going, 22,000 posts. You know, we are on a massive wave of positivity at the moment, but we can't stop now. We've done a really good job to this point, and long may it continue. But if we stop, all that hard work's for nothing. So, and all that BAFTA stuff's for nothing. It doesn't mean a thing. We just need to push this on now and push this forward, and hopefully keep that momentum going.
Like you say, this was a big moment for Shenmue. It went viral, essentially, and touched a lot of people that probably have never even heard of it. And obviously that sort of leads us into ITV and a few of the other little articles that are around that, where it was like, you know, the winner of the BAFTA Awards for the most influential video game of all time is one that you may have never heard of. So that was kind of the headline from ITV, and I actually persevered, because for some reason, even though there is a scraping bar when you're watching ITV live, you can't actually use it to go back in time or go forward in time. Very, very difficult to use, very clunky feature, the ITV player. So I had to basically sit from the start of the news and just sit through them, and it ended up being the very last thing in the news, actually, which timeline-wise, when I was reading messages on Discord that Shenmue's had mentioned on the news, I was thinking, oh god, I've only got to wait 28 minutes or whatever, because it was like 28 minutes past 6. But actually, I think they may have just seen that coming later in the news, and then Shenmue was there, so it was like an hour and a half later, and I managed to grab this section of the ITV thing. But it's very positive. It's, you know, even if it is a game that you may have never heard of, it's obviously won this vote, this poll, for a reason. So, you know, why not give it a go now? Now you know what it is.
Yeah, everybody should know what it is now. Christ.
Yeah, but the ITV thing, mate, it was funny. I would urge everyone just to go watch it. We did upload this chunk of footage to the YouTube channel, but there was a few people interviewed in there. There was a couple of girls that were playing on an actual Dreamcast, and obviously they mentioned the whirring noise of the Dreamcast, so it already sounds old. So they kind of went in with negative vibes, and it's like, oh, I can't skip cutscenes, and very cringy actually. But obviously that is the mindset of a young type of person these days, very much like TikTok head, and you know, they want instant gratification, whereas like Shenmue is kind of the opposite of that. But if you get it, you get it. So hopefully there is a younger fan base that can get into Shenmue and actually understand, you know, these more patient people actually see the beauty that is in Shenmue, sort of thing. There was a nice guy actually at the end that was interviewed, said some nice positive things about Shenmue. Wish there was a little bit more of him. So that leads me to this question, Matt. So if you were interviewed by the ITV News, what do you think you would have said about Shenmue?
Well, I just turn around, #Let's Get Shenmue 4, mic drop and leave.
Yeah?
But no, all joking aside here, I think I'd just be saying that back in the day when we played this game, it is highly influential, but it was also in our formative years, wasn't it? It was the first game for us that really brought a world alive. The first game for us that really, it was a massive technological leap from playing like a game like a Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is a fantastic game, don't get me wrong. But what Shenmue did was take that and multiply that by 1,000,000 in terms of what it did, in terms of the NPCs, in terms of the world building, in terms of the music, the motion capture for the fighting, the ability to pick up every item in the world and explore and look at it. It just turned everything up to 11, and that was a defining moment in gaming right there. It's then, as you said earlier, taken all these elements off and just done them so well that actually then created this open world genre that we now have. And that's the influence that Shenmue carries. That's what I tell ITV.
Wow. I kind of wish you were there now for that interview. But to be fair, Matt, they probably cut the footage up. You know, you'd be saying Shenmue's the greatest video game ever made. The thoughtless stuff is amazing. It's like a real life world simulator, and anyone that says otherwise is an arsehole. And they'd cut it up, and it'd be Shenmue is a forklift simulator for arseholes.
Oh dear. I bet there's some people right turning over it.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to that little bit there. I thought of earlier.
Dear. I like that.
Anyway, Matt, obviously you get the reference, hopefully there, guys.
Yes.
We're going to move on swiftly from that. So great news for Shenmue and the BAFTA. Keep at it, guys. Make sure that whenever you talk about Shenmue now, you make sure you say it's the BAFTA award-winning Shenmue. That is the full title of Shenmue these days. Make sure you use all of those words when you talk about it and discuss it. Artwork time now, Matt. So this has been a project that we've been working on maybe a little bit too long. We've hyped it up quite a lot, but finally it is out. It is released. You can go onto the Dojo website right now. There's links on the news articles there, but we will also link these in the show notes below. You can also access it from the media section if you go onto the main header of the website and click media. Scroll down a little bit to the Shenmue history section. Loads of amazing galleries, and one of these galleries will be this gallery, the Shenmue artworks. I forget what I actually titled. What did I title it on the media section?
I can't remember.
I'll have a quick look while you talk a little bit about what these artworks are then, Matt.
I mean, to cut a very long story short, we got these from a Japanese auction back in January. They shipped over, and then James and I scanned them all and digitized them. And in the last few months, which, bearing in mind, I think we needed to do all of this, we've then touched all the images up, so any scanning artifacts have been removed. James has built the website with everything on it, and we separated it into sections like NPCs, Shenhua, Niaosun. There's some really good stuff in there, actually, around the character profiles of Niaosun and Shenhua particularly. There's some really, really good stuff in there.
Gorgeous artwork.
And because this is all development from like Virtua Fighter RPGs or 1996. Some of it probably touches towards the end of the development potentially. But what this is a look in time as well. Not only it's Shenmue 4 stuff like the Cliff Temple and things like that, but also the plans for Shenmue 3. And actually, you look at the skeleton of what they talk about with Niao-sun and Li Feng. The skeleton of Shenmue 3 has been there a long time, long time. And the game we got, albeit truncated in a lot of ways, follows that skeleton. So again, this whole thing with Shenmue 3, is it canon, is it not? It is canon, and we can prove it's fucking canon because it's written down. And it's just unfortunate in some aspects we didn't quite get, I think, the detail they'd have liked to have put into a Shenmue 3. But these artworks give a glimpse into that. They give a glimpse into what may come in Shenmue 4. And some bloody good artwork to look at, and it's preserved, digitized forever. You can download it immediately off of our website, so you can have your own copies of it, print them out, do whatever you want with them. But yeah, we had to have them. I'm glad we've got them. Time Extension wrote quite a nice article on it as well. It ended up on Push Square as well. So again, Shenmue's been in the news for the right reasons.
Definitely, yeah. And there's also some Virtua Fighter artwork in there as well if you're a Virtua Fighter fan. Mainly Virtua Fighter 4, but there's Takahashi artwork in there, which sort of suggests that he was part of the original plans to be included in Virtua Fighter 4, which is an interesting artwork to see. He's wearing a different outfit than the one that he was wearing in Virtua Fighter 3, at least. So yeah, some great stuff in there. Matt's pretty much covered it there. Go check it out, go download it, and enjoy the content. And at the top of the page, you'll also find like a section on Shenmue 4 that we've taken every bit of artwork that we feel could be something spoilery from the future of the series and sort of amalgamated it together in this section. So if that interests you as well, intrigues you, some of the findings of like Shenmue 4 and beyond, definitely check out that specific gallery. There's a bit of context behind a lot of the things there, which we've added, like cutscenes and chapter tile artwork and stuff, so definitely check those out, guys. Next up, a few little community project type things that have happened recently, Matt. So a guy popped up on the Dojo Discord in the community project section where people share a lot of the community projects that are being worked on actively by Shenmue fans, and a guy called Scrivani popped up with a link to a Mill CD download. So from what I'm aware of with this, the Dreamcast had an exploit where essentially if you've ever purchased or played a burnt copy or burnt your own sort of games, I say purchased, that was me like on the school playground. There was like a guy that was making all these burnt copies of Dreamcast games, and you buy a game off him for $5 or whatever, and he'd bring it in school the next day. Here's your game, Sonic Adventure 2 or whatever, and then you take it home, pop it in your Dreamcast, and it'd just work magic. You might need the Utopia boot disc thing with the spinning reindeer.
Oh, yeah, I remember
But
that.
for the most part, a lot of them were self-booting, actually. Like, towards the tail end of the Dreamcast, they sort of perfected how to boot these bootlegged games. So I think the mill CD is an exploit, which is basically why copied games were a thing from the first place. So there was like these very limited, like only a couple were made, I think, in Japan, music CDs that were playable on a Dreamcast. And it was this technology in the music CD that essentially allows CDRs to function, something they missed security-wise. So essentially the Scrivani guy, he has taken Shenmue the movie, which prior to this was only available on DVD format. Obviously, you can't play DVDs on your Dreamcast. It was a big thing. That's why the PS2 won back in the day, because of the bloody DVD drive, right? So the Dreamcast isn't capable of playing DVDs. So what Scrivani's done is he's managed to take all of the Shenmue the movie, the content, the chapters, even like the sort of the menu sequence where you select what chapters you want and whatever, and he's turned it into a mill CD format. So for the first time ever, in a sense, you can watch Shenmue the movie on your Sega Dreamcast, which might be interesting to someone. Again, links will be in the show notes below. That's something you want to go ahead and do. And the CDI files are out, Matt, so I assuming you can sort of download them, burn them to a CDR, and pop it in your Dreamcast, it'll work.
Yeah, that's the intention, I think, but I could be very wrong on that. It looks that way. It's certainly implied that way, but I'm sure someone will tell us if we're wrong.
Yeah, check the files anyway, the folders that are on the Google Drive that has been shared by Scrivani, and there's an English version, there's a Japanese version, there appears to be a Portuguese, Brazilian version. So, sort of covered all the bases there. If that interests you, go ahead and check it out, and let us know how good it is. And then the other community project, Matt, that's been shared recently is an update to one that we spoke about, I don't know if it was last episode or the first episode of the season, which was a game, or a fan game rather, entitled Project Carlisle. What's been going on with this Project Carlisle, Matt?
So Project Carlisle, just for anybody who doesn't remember, is being made by Idris, who is on our Discord as well. The studio name he's got on YouTube is Shenhua Made Studios, which is quite a nice name there. And he released sort of a concept trailer for Project Carlisle, with sort of Rio walking around some very basic environments and a sort of a boat type environment from memory. He's then gone and released a sort of a full-blown teaser trailer called Journey to Hong Kong, which is now the game title. The Project Carlisle thing has been dropped, and it's a Shenmue fan game covering the boat chapter, so all the way from leaving the harbour over in Japan and the trip over to Hong Kong as well. So I think it's taken a real sort of big jump in terms of where it was into where it is now. I think he's done a really good job. Actually, the environments are coming together. There's a little fighting engine in there as well, which looks pretty snappy for a fan project here. There's some nice music in there. There's some voiceovers, like one or two. I sit there and half recognise some of the voices. I don't know whether they're people from the community or not, but there's some voice acting in there as well. He does say that you need to suspend a little bit of belief in terms of some of the storyline stuff they're doing. But you know what? We need more fan projects, don't we, like this? It keeps the burning passion of the community sort of alive. Mm-hmm. He's touting it'll be out towards the end of May. If it is, I will intend to play it if I can on stream, but we'll see what happens, because my little one may have arrived by then and I'll be on my paternity leave. But if not, then I will hopefully try and play it. But I did say to him the other day, don't rush it. When it's ready, it's ready.
That seems quite ambitious at the end of May, but I mean, it's shaped up since he sort of brought it to attention, maybe like when he started in January, and
about that, yeah.
The game looks a lot better than it did in that first preview. He's even got like a 1v1 fighting system that actually looked really good. I was surprised.
Yeah, I was well impressed with that, actually.
Yeah, it looks, if he can delve into sort of that aspect, you could potentially have a bit of a Shenmue fighter on the cards there. The way it was looking, like the moves and some of the combos and stuff that you were pulling off in this sort of pre-alpha footage almost. So if, depending on how much you can get done towards the tail end of May, if that's when it is going to get finished and released, then Yeah, it looks very, very promising, I must say.
It does. It does look really good, and obviously, like I say, we'll go ahead and give it a go and give it some coverage when it does release. And you just noticed something on the fan project side. I just stumbled across this while we were talking.
Yeah,
You remember Kenzo, who did Hood Story?
yeah, of course, yeah.
He's just released a small teaser trailer of his next game, Hood Story Hong Kong Triads.
Wow.
And I have to say, looking at it, that trailer looks pretty cool, actually. It's a really nice representation of Hong Kong there. Kenzo obviously worked with a very, very small team on this particular game, but he's released a game very much inspired by Shenmue and Yakuza, and the first game was really good for what is basically a very small project. And I say very small in the way there wasn't many people that worked on it, but he's really come together with his vision with that game, and this looks like it's just extending on that vision, and I can't wait to see more of it. Actually, I think it looks really good.
Yeah, I'm just watching the trailer as we speak, actually, so you'll probably have some of this footage in the YouTube version, but it looks like he's upgraded the character models, the graphics, some of the steam off the floor, just very atmospheric. Oh, as he's walking now, the sunlight's sort of capturing some rays. Yeah, this looks
really impressive.
Really impressive, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, fair play. Well done, Kenzo. Again, I've said this to him before, but I said you need to go to a game company with your portfolio, because I think someone would take him on, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah, this is turning into something quite special, really.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Glad you brought that to the attention there, Max. I hadn't actually seen that, and it looks great.
Brilliant.
Next up, we've got another fan project from Frogball, who obviously previously you may have seen his sort of Game U arcade 3D running on the Sega Saturn, and also the forklift racing that he's shown off very recently. But then he's gone and added more to it and actually released this as a fully fledged Sega Saturn game map.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, you touched on his history there. I think in November 2024, he released the sort of initial shot of the U arcade with the games sort of playable. These Master System versions of Space Harrier and some of the other games, QTE titles playable. Then, like, what would be, I think, about a few days back, showed off the forklift racing. You think, oh, this is shaping up quite nicely. And then just literally out of nowhere, announces a stream. And it turns out he's made a fully fledged game for the Saturn 30th anniversary competition. I can't remember who's running that competition. I'd have to dig out the notes that I made for the video I did on the actual game itself. But it's called Shenmue Back in Yokosuka. And it's essentially a mix of the 3D environments like your U arcade and your forklift racing at the harbour, with sort of a 2.5D isometric look, sort of very reminiscent of the Sega Saturn era, like grandiose, like RPG type games from the time. So it's expanded, I guess, into sort of two things in some respects. I suspect that there's more developments that happen on that game as well. There's NPCs running around. It uses some of the Dreamcast game music as well. You basically go around, you find money to go to the harbour and participate in the forklift races. You can go in the U arcade and play some of the games in there as well. And I think it's a technical, again, marvel to see some of these 3D environments like actually running. Now, this legitimately runs on Saturn hardware. I haven't got the facility to capture a Saturn properly at home.
Did you run it on your actual Saturn with that Fender, or have you got man?
The Saru. So
the Saru, yeah.
I ran it on an emulator. So I used RetroArch with Beetle Saturn as the core. And that ran it absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. But the person who did the Shenmue quiz for the Saturn running on Saturn hardware did a little video of it running on actual Sega Saturn hardware with the Saru cart thing that obviously basically acts as a boot cart for the games. So you don't need to use the disk drive. And it runs flawlessly on actual Sega Saturn hardware, which is, I know it's, people go, what it should do, it's designed for the Saturn, but to see it actually physically running on Sega Saturn hardware, I know it's mind-blowing, because there's always been this attachment to Shenmue and the Sega Saturn version of it and all the rest of it, and people wanting to see that actual version. And this is fairly close, I think, to what we're going to get, to have an actual Shenmue game on top of the quiz, obviously, but a fully fledged game running on a Sega Saturn is mind-blowing. And I think there's a lot of work and dedication that's gone into that. I don't know if Frogpools had assistance from other people as well to get the game running and get things working, but I guess it's just another sort of feather to the bow of his plethora of work. When you look at, you got Metal Gear Solid running on a Saturn, he had Crash Bandicoot running on a Saturn. Yeah, I think it looks fantastic. The game itself, good little game to play. I did a let's play of it about a week ago now. Yeah, well worth your time. It's all available to download publicly, and we'll see where it ends up in this competition as well.
Definitely. It's very authentic Saturn looking as well, with the textures and what you would expect to see from a 3D Saturn / like you said, a 2D isometric type of game that sort of joins those 3D elements together. It looks awesome. I've actually just picked up a Saru myself, Matt.
Have you?
Yeah, because I was having all that issues with the mode, and I'm still waiting to hear back from them Terra Onion people about that mode thing that I ordered. But yeah, something I'll give a go when it arrives. Pop on there.
I swear by the Saru. I think for the money, there's lots of different versions of it out there, but for the money I paid, having every PAL game on there, it boots, it runs, there's no real issues to it. There's the odd little bug here or there, but I think if you want to play the complete Sega Saturn library at an affordable price, that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, it could be a good idea for people that actually want to play this brand new Shenmue fan game on a Saru.
Absolutely.
Well, on their own Sega Saturn could be an option for you.
Absolutely. Go and check it out. We'll have the links below.
Cool. And finally, Matt, talking about an actually is a released game, not a fan project, but an actual Yu Suzuki release title now, Matt. Steel Paws is out right now. Obviously,
it is.
Last show we were talking about it approaching the release date. The release date's been and gone. You can actually get your Netflix app out, or you can literally just get it through the Google Play Store, or the I think it might even be on the App Store. It
is indeed.
It just, once you boot the game up, it then asks for you to log into Netflix. So obviously you do need a Netflix subscription for this. But Matt, you've played it, you've completed it, you've given a good extensive review. If you want to just share some quick thoughts before we move on.
I mean, some very, very quick thought. You can see it all in the video review or the written review that I put together for it. Overall, I think it's a very good game. I enjoyed it. It is very simple in terms of its gameplay mechanics. You just run through, beat up robots, kill a boss, progress. If you die, you keep your stuff, level up, and try again. But I don't mind that. Very solid game put together. There are some issues with it. I think the touch controls are a bit iffy, to be honest, and I struggled with them. It needed a bit more context around some of the story stuff, because you don't even know the main character's name, for example. Whereas I think Air Twister used the adventure map really well to have that lore sort of built in. You had to look for it, but it was there. Whereas I think Steel Paws doesn't have that. But I will say the music is fantastic in that game as well. It's utterly fantastic. It's probably their best overall musical experience from a WiseNet game, in my opinion. Shenmue 3 was great, but obviously has some odd-place music. Air Twister had Valencia, which I think divided opinion, but this is, for me, the music and the sound design here is absolutely brilliant. And I would recommend going and giving it a try. It's a throwback to like a GameCube sort of game, but that's good. I like games like that. We need more games like this. And I think at one point on the App Store in the UK, it was like in the top 30 for adventure games. So it did quite well. Did quite well there. It's had, I think, it says over 10,000 downloads on Google Play. It's got 4.8 out of 5 stars on Google Play with nearly 200 reviews on it.
Wow.
So it's done pretty well there in that sense of the word. Yeah, go and check it out, guys, if you haven't done so already. It is a good fun game. And hopefully it keeps WiseNet running, and there's more to come from the studio. Hopefully Shenmue 4.
Yeah, and go give it a review by the sounds of it, because that's a cracking score, really.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I'm surprised actually by how many people have left reviews, because a lot of people don't take the time to do that sort of thing, but it's nice to see that we've had over 200 reviews on that. So very good, guys. Yeah, definitely go check out Steel Paws and go support WiseNet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, we're going to have a quick music break now before we get into the main discussion part of the show. This is a piece of music I just randomly selected. I thought we haven't played this yet, so why not? So this is Project X Zone's version of Shenmue's main theme. Welcome back. That was the Project X Zone version of Shenmue's main theme. Might even be Project X Zone 2, actually, I think, is where that's come from. The Nintendo DS 3DS game.
Very good.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a Shenmue cameo.
Mhm.
If you know, you know. Anyway, Matt, so yeah, as mentioned at the start of the show, we're going to be talking about why Shenmue is influential, why it's won this award for being the most influential video game of all time. We're going to talk a little bit about our thoughts first about sort of the qualities in Shenmue that we think have then influenced games to come, essentially. I've got a nice sort of bullet point list here. So we're going to be talking about some aspects of Shenmue, or the aspects of Shenmue that potentially could be considered influential. So yeah, I guess we'll just kick straight off, Matt. No time to dilly dally.
Let's dive in.
Jump straight in with the first point. So this is something that we sort of spitballed the other night, right, Matt? We were just talking a little bit about what we actually think could be considered influential. And the first thing I've got, no particular order, but the dynamic weather. So
yes,
obviously it's referred to by Yu Suzuki as magic weather. Obviously, Shenmue takes place at the tail end of November, early December, so it's a lot of very much a winter-themed game. You've got the snow that then melts because it starts to rain on certain days. Obviously, you've also got clear, sunny days, cloudy days. You can even ring the weather telephone number, the operating services there, and she'll tell you the predicted weather for the following day. So she'll say like clear skies predicted.
Clear skies predicted.
So very much a massive mechanic that on the surface probably serves very little. Obviously doesn't play a massive part of the experience, but it adds to the experience by being the ambience. It sort of focuses you more into the game world. The world feels more alive because of the weather constantly changing. So you don't really know what the weather is going to be like from one day to the next or 1 week to the next. Obviously, they also included the original weather mode that they sort of got all these meteorological results that is insane, but they actually captured a year's worth of results of what the actual weather was like in Yokosuka in Japan from 1986 to 1987, which is an insane level of detail. And obviously they included that as another weather mode that you can access from if you're playing the remasters. There's a little toggle, you can pick the game weather or the actual real world weather. Obviously the real world weather they probably would have gone with had it not have been quite a lot of the same type of weather, I think, that year. So there's a lot of not so much snow, and obviously the snow is a massive part of what makes those winter vibes in Shenmue 1. The crunch of the snow that we're massive advocates for, aren't we, Matt? Probably the best snow in gaming.
Yeah, you hear that crunch as you run past or walk past. I don't know, there's something really satisfying about that.
Exactly, yeah. Pretty much the whole first part of the game just starts off in the snow, doesn't it? So it does feel very much like a lot of people do consider it to be like a Christmassy type of game, which obviously you can see why. It's set in December. It looks very cold, feels very cold. A lot of snow-covered terrain, essentially. I don't know if you've got any other points on the weather map that you can think of.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at dynamic weather through gaming, it has obviously been a thing for a long time. I think Flight Simulator is one of the first games to use it back in the early 80s. And there's been sort of iterations of weather impacting gameplay, like in racing games and things over time. But when you look at the genre that Shenmue is, that's like RPG, action-adventure type game, you look at other games prior to that, the weather was static. It didn't do anything. It was if it rained the entire game, and that was it. Whereas I think Shenmue's weather was the first exposure I had to proper dynamic weather within an action-adventure game as part of a world. So it just, like you said, it built the aesthetics, it built that feel around the world, like feeling real, feeling like you actually could engross yourself in something like that. That one day you'd go out and it'd be hammering it down with rain, but then you go out the next day and you've got snow everywhere, the snow coming down and the crunch of all that snow. But then a couple of days later, you might be going out and it might have that Sega blue sky out there, Now, does it impact the physical gameplay itself? No. But it affects the aesthetics. It affects the whole feel of what you're doing when you're playing that game. And as you say, some people say it's sort of a Christmas game. And so many games now use dynamic weather systems. Red Dead Redemption 2 uses it, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of that game itself. GTA's had weather systems in it since GTA 3. And I'm led to believe that GTA 6 is going to have a real sort of dynamic weather system that's really going to impact the gameplay more sort of building on from GTA 5. The new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's got a really cool weather system which really does change, and it's got individual seasons in it as well. So again, they've built upon that platform that Shenmue put together. And actually, if it's done well, it adds to the feel, it adds to the game, it adds to the world. And that's what Shenmue's weather system did. It added to the world, it added to the feel of it. And I think, not to be too critical of Shenmue 2, which probably is my favourite game of all time, you lose that a little bit in the Hong Kong element, don't you, and Kowloon, because you don't have that variety of weather. You get a bit of rain, but you don't have that, like, I don't know, that special feel of the snow coming down on Christmas or on New Year's when you're out and about walking through Debuita. So it definitely has a big influence on games, and so many games now use dynamic weather. I think it's a built-in for Unreal Engine as well, so lots of fan projects will use the dynamic weather in Unreal, or lots of big companies will use it because it's there. So again, it's sort of influenced that idea that it's now in a game engine permanently as well.
Yeah, good point, Sam. I think, like you say, maybe it didn't pioneer weather in video games, but it was probably the first game of its kind that actually turned weather into an atmospheric device where it's like constantly changing day by day. And like you say, it was probably the first game I actually noticed the weather changing in. There might be weather in other games, like maybe driving games might have had a track that had got rain, but like you say, that was kind of maybe a toggle feature. So like you'd start a race and you'd pick, do you want it to be sunny, do you want it to be cloudy, do you want it to be rainy? So you actually pick that as an option, whereas just Shenmue just naturally changed the weather, and it felt very realistic because of that. So perhaps not a pioneer, but in terms of what it did to weather systems in games moving forward, I think it possibly could be considered a pioneer in that field.
It definitely popularized it.
Definitely,
and that's the thing. That's when you're talking about influence, you don't always have to be the first either to influence something.
Exactly.
It popularized and showed what a weather system could do, and now it's this mainstay in many games now.
Very good, very good. So second point we've got kind of relates a little bit to that. So we've got day and night, so the sort of time-based mechanic. So obviously you've got the weather that constantly changes throughout the days, throughout the weeks that we've just spoken about, but also we've got this time-based system. So Rio wakes up at 8 in the morning, his alarm goes off, it feels very much like a fresh day, a new day. I quite like that feeling. You do up to a certain part of the story, or go do some mini games, go get some sodas, go talk to people or whatever, then go home, go bed. Next day I'm going to be doing this. So you're sort of planning out what you're going to be doing tomorrow almost before you've even reached that part of the game. It's quite a cool sort of thing to think about, actually. As you're running home, you're thinking, tomorrow in the morning, first thing I'm going to do is go to the Abe store or Abe store or whatever, and open some capsule toys. We've also sort of had these feelings as you're running back home, right? So that time-based system, obviously these cutscenes that happen in the daytime, these cutscenes that happen at night time, these bars that are shut in the day, bars that open at night, same with shops. Certain shops are open and close, obviously like a natural living world would be. You'd expect a shop to have a 10 o'clock opening and shuts at 5 or shuts at 7 or whatever. So Shenmue actually, again, maybe there was this sort of system in other games prior to it, but Shenmue's built upon that and made it so well created and defined that, again, it just adds to the world. It adds to that realism that Yu Suzuki was going for. We should have actually read that, but Yu Suzuki came out as in thanks of getting this most influential video game of all time BAFTA award, and he said in his message, I'm sort of, this isn't the exact quote, but I'm from memory, he said something to the extent of, at the start of it, they wanted to create something that felt like a real world. They sort of tested the technologies that were available at the time to try and make the most realistic video game possible, and that they did with just the first two things we mentioned here, weather and the day and night time cycle, definitely help to make that world feel very much alive. You've got the NPCs that are all on schedules as well, so you've got people that you'll see in the morning, or like the kids going to school. We mentioned with George and the Christmas show, like he was surprised that Megumi comes back from school on the bus. You see her walking home at like 3:30 or whatever school finishes, or 5:00, with a little school bag on her back. You know what I mean? These people actually close the shutters on the front of the stores, shut the doors, start walking home. You can follow them. If you follow them, they'll go all the way to a house, shut the door, and then you could even knock on the door, and then you can hear that character then talking. If you'd tried knocking on the door previously, Rio would go, looks like no one's in, but that character's got home. They're saying like, oh, please don't disturb me, I've just got home. It's crazy, but those things, perhaps not like amazing to experience today, but back in 1999, that was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I've seen streamers. There was a guy, I think it was actually Adam Scipione's mate. He recommended, some guy he just started Shenmue, and he was making a couple of these Let's Play videos. And to see this guy that had never played Shenmue before, and then he was knocking on a few doors, and someone actually opens the door and speaks to you, and his mind was blown, because it's like, you know what I mean? It's like that level of detail in the game that just adds to this lived-in experience. It's still unmatched to me. Like, I know there is games, and some games that you just mentioned there, Matt, like Assassin's Creed Shadows or whatever, but the detail in the small town environment, with all of these things going on behind the scenes, with the weather and the time and all that sort of stuff, and the scheduling, just make Shenmue feel so special. But as unique as it might feel to me, that these elements again have then been carried over into other games and expanded on, or they've gone off and done their own thing with the day and night cycle. I mean, to the best of your sort of ability there, Matt, can you think of a game that has actually actively taken this day and night type of cycle? Just naturally happens. There isn't many time-based games that are like set to a clock. But...
No, I mean, a lot of games, I think, because Shenmue, especially Shenmue 1, had things set to a time that you had to wait for as well. So it was very much important to the game engine at the time, and the feel of the game itself. Whereas I think a lot of games now have that sort of day and night cycle in there, but it doesn't massively impact what you can and can't do within the game, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So some things will change, like you might get different NPCs coming out or whatever, but it doesn't greatly impact the overall feel of the game. I think with Shenmue, what it did is, like, Dobuita in the day feels very different to Dobuita at night, in terms of the people you're going to come across, the shops and things that are open. And actually, it translates, I think, across all three Shenmue games, in my opinion. Like Shenmue 2, you're walking around Hong Kong at night, you've got the bright lights everywhere. And it's, I don't know, you've got that sort of atmospheric vibe of Hong Kong, that bustle, that hustle bustle, the lights and everything for Hong Kong. And then in Bailu and Shenmue 3, I don't know, it feels cozy and just different and rural and calm and nice in Shenmue 3. So it impacts the atmosphere, or the atmospherics of the overall feel of the games across all three. Lots of games use day-night cycles these days. Again, I think it's a very much a mainstay. There may have been games that did it before Shenmue, but I don't think there were games that did it as well. And I think even now, some games, while they use it, I think it's more of a realism thing than a functional system within the game, if that makes sense. It impacts how you're going to play it, impacts how you're going to feel about it. And that's where I think Shenmue stands out over the rest.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to add on to the point you were making about the different vibes depending on the day and night, like I think the music really adds to that sort of atmosphere as well. So like Shenmue 2, for instance, has daytime themes in the areas and nighttime themes, and the nighttime themes are more mellowed out, so it does feel like it's late in the game almost. It feels like people are going to bed, you're out wandering the streets, and it's a lot quieter on the streets, and the mellow music sort of makes you feel like the day is coming to an end. And again, it's details like that, and I know that's only the music, but the music in Shenmue could even be a category on its own. I've not added music as a category, but the scale and scope of the music, the orchestral soundtrack to all three games, Shenmue 1 especially, some of the music, the sort of the free music that just progresses and evolves over time, adds so much to the world there. So you got, depending on where you are in the quest, or the storyline, the music subtly changes. So the same areas that you sort of wandering around, I'm thinking like after Nozomi sort of said that she's going to Canada and it gets a bit sad, then it starts playing that sadness music done to in town, and it just sort of brings the tone down of the game. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's hard to sort of explain what I'm thinking, but the music does so much as well. It's not a gameplay feature. It's not something that directly impacts the world, but hearing the music evolve and change over time, it just immerses you more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Difficult one to explain that. I don't know if that music can be considered a factory, because obviously there was amazing soundtracks prior to Shenmue, but
yeah,
I think maybe with the orchestra side of things, like the full-fledged stage sort of orchestra that they had at these premiere shows, could that be considered influence for the future?
I think it potentially had some influence to it. I think a lot of games, especially when you hit the sort of the CD-based media era of games, it allowed you to do a bit more with music and things as well. I think then games started leaning into sort of properly mixed sound. I say properly mixed soundtracks. I mean that in the traditional sense of like recording studios making the soundtracks for games and everything else. Mm-hmm. And I think Shenmue, again, among other games over the many years of games, has done a really good job with music. But the music in Shenmue is fantastic. It's one of the best soundtracks out there. It's in the classic FM Hall of Fame, for goodness sake. So say what you will on that one, but the music's definitely brilliant.
Good point on that. I forgot about that. Classic FM Hall of Fame, definitely. So Day and Night, anyway, we're saying potential pioneer or not?
Again, popularised it, I think.
Popularised it. Yeah. Could be a theme.
Sure.
That.
Yeah.
QTEs now, Matt. So again, do you reckon Shenmue popularised them?
Wow. Yeah, it did, because Dragon's Lair did it first many years ago.
Exactly. These games, these FMV type games on the Mega CD as well, that were very much quick press. I'm thinking about the Power Rangers movie game. If you ever played that, Matt, that was like ridiculously quick. Race Avenger, whatever it's called.
Die Hard Arcade on the Saturn had QTEs in it as well.
Yeah.
Among other things. But I think Shenmue was the one that, again, popularised the use of QTEs within cutscenes and things like that. So you had, like, you're chasing Jimmy, you press your buttons and away you go. So, I mean, I won't sit on QTEs too long, because they're quite obvious. We know what they are, quick timer events. But I think what it did was showed how they could be implemented in a game. I thought the QTEs were done pretty well in the first two Shenmue games. Shenmue 3 was a bit hard, but we'll blame my reactions on most of that and the timing window. Good God Almighty. But it did QTEs really well. It made you sort of feel part of that cutscene. But also, I think it's maybe a negative, I don't know, is that you're on edge. You have to be watching. You can't. But that's part of the era we grew up, and you didn't have mobile phones or anything. So you'd be intently watching that game, wouldn't you? You'd be sat there with your Dreamcast controlling your hand, going, "Where's this fucking QTE? He's gonna fucking oh shit, bang!" And then you fall in like and
the barber chair.
Yeah. So. Again, I think it popularised the use of QTE in a lot of video games, for better or worse, I think people would say. But yeah, it's a feature that's a mainstay now. What definitely wasn't the first to do it, but the one that I really think implemented them well and then popularised the implementation in games going forward.
Yeah, I think when people do cite the use of QTEs, they do always tend to mention Shenmue, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
It is, like you say, prior to Shenmue, I don't even think they had a name. I don't think anyone was calling them QTEs until Yu Suzuki wrote I think they were actually quick timer events.
Yeah, they were.
In the manual. Obviously, that's been shortened to quick time events, but definitely Shenmue to thank or to blame for that, I guess, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, whether or not you like QTEs. I suppose if you're listening to the show, you're a Shenmue fan, you pretty much like QTEs, I think. But at least you don't mind them.
Yeah, you can tolerate them.
You can tolerate them, yeah. Moving on, Matt, we've got insane detail levels. So Shenmue, again, it blows my mind actually, the scale and scope of the detail that they were able to implement back in 99. So you're talking about a game that probably was maybe hyped up a little bit too much, like ambitions wise, where they were saying that you could literally go anywhere, do anything that you want to do. That was kind of the vibe a lot of people were getting from this game, like, oh, finally this is going to be a game where if I want to do this, the game will allow me to do it. And obviously the game can't do everything. There's these restrictions in place, but for what Shenmue does allow you to do, again, it did it so well at the time. It was like the first game that I played where you could literally open any drawer in the house. You could pick up objects, look at them, like just pick an orange up and tilt Rio's hand, turn it around. Obviously, it serves no purpose other than, again, just allowing the player to do more with its environment. And it just adds to, again, it's unnecessary. You've seen people sort of play through Shenmue 3 and they're opening the drawers and it's like, well, there's no real point to any of these drawers. There's nothing in any of these drawers. But there doesn't need to be. That's not what Yu Suzuki or whatever the team were trying to do. Like, you're not going to find an item in every drawer. They just allowed you the ability to open every drawer because why not? It's the same with every room in the Kowloon Yellowhead buildings and all these different buildings, the Thousand Whitewater building, Moonchild building. Every single door you can pretty much open and go in and see a different room in front of you. They didn't need to do that, but again, whilst 99.9% of those rooms serve absolutely no purpose to the game, the fact that they allow you to do that adds to the overall experience and enjoyment of the game, because it's giving you the ability to do that if you want to do it. And I think Shenmue was the first game, at least that I played, where I had so much available to me to do. Majority of it unnecessary. You know, picking up an orange you don't need to do, like I've just said. But the fact that you can do it blew my mind back in 2000.
I think it still blows my mind a little bit to these days, that just the level of stuff you could interact with within the game itself. Like you say, you don't. Like, it's not needed, but it builds the world. It builds that feeling of being engrossed within that world. I was doing a bit of research around it, and there was a game called Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Trespass that had a very basic physics engine in it where you could pick up objects, but the game was apparently terrible, so nobody really ever played it, I think. So there is earlier examples of it than Shenmue, but what Shenmue did was just turn that up to 165 sort of thing, and just it was in your face. That whole ability, that the whole hands thing that Huber talked about when I interviewed him, is a big part of that. That you see Ryo's hand, you see the veins on his hands, you pick up that object, that orange or whatever, his hand clasps around it, you pick it up, you can look at it, you pop it back down, his hand moves naturally to pick those objects up and down. You pick up a different object like a capsule, he'll pick it up with his fingers, won't he?
Yeah, well, we saw the motion capture for that, didn't we, when in the premiere footage. Insane. The developers with these gloves on, picking up random objects, picking up different things, turning doorknobs, and obviously that was then carried on through into the game, and you can actually see that animations, that human interaction. I think that's very much what Shenmue is, and the character playing the role of Ryo Hazuki. You feel very much human by being able to use Ryo's hands to pick up stuff and open drawers. And you know, that point you mentioned about, you know, the insane detail, games prior to that may have had the ability to pick up objects, but I'm thinking of, like, say the original Resident Evil, for example, where you just literally spamming A next to cupboards, aren't you, hoping that something will happen. So one of them, it might show a drawer opening and, you know, you pick up a key or something, but you don't naturally lean in to grab it. You don't naturally take it out of the drawer, hold it in the air, spin it around your surroundings if you want to, and look at it, and then add it to your inventory sort of naturally. And then it's like, oh, drawer opened, key obtained, and then you use that onto a door. You know what I mean? So Shenmue sort of took that concept, in a sense, the fact that you can find a key in a drawer, but evolved on it in a natural manner, in a world-building manner, a more realistic manner. So yeah, I think just that was just sort of piggybacking off the point you were making there, Matt.
Yeah, I would agree with that in its entirety. I think it was the first game that did it on the level, and probably actually when you look at games now, there aren't many that come close to it. Red Dead Redemption 2 comes pretty close in terms of the world building. You can go into shops and pick up objects and look at them. You can definitely do that in that game. But I would struggle to name many games that have that level of detail that Shenmue does to build the world. So that's definitely probably a pioneer and an influence in a double sense, that they've probably influenced games in some respects of tailoring that back to a point. Although I hope games now, with this whole sort of AAA going out of control, they start looking inward and expanding in on those detail objects again that maybe build the worlds better than these sort of big open worlds with nothing in them. But I think overall it pioneered that whole detailing thing in a good sense, that it's still to this day it holds up, but also I think in maybe a negative sense that games looked at that and go, well, you don't really need to do that, so we aren't going to bother. But then the world's just got out of control big with nothing in them and felt empty. and that's where I think they can come back and look at Shenmue and go, right, let's see if we can expand the worlds inwards, make them more detailed and interactive, and hopefully then you get a bit of that magic back in some of those worlds.
Yeah, for sure. So again, part of almost like a blueprint for...
Yeah, definitely a blueprint, a very, very important blueprint.
So next up, Matt, we've got Notebook, which you were saying that, I think you did a bit of a Google on this, but Shenmue's potentially the first game of its kind to include not so much the concept of a notebook, of course, but I mean like note-taking and stuff, but a quest log, I guess, is...
Yeah, I mean, games had, like, back in the day, you would have, like, little tick lists, wouldn't you, or objectives in the pause screen that you could go and look at, and that's been a mainstay for games for as long as I can remember. But what and I could be wrong in this, so if I am wrong, someone will correct me, I'm sure. But what I remember with Shenmue, it's the first sort of real implementation of this within the game itself, within an item you use within the game to mark off your quest objectives as you're going through. And other games have used it since. Uncharted had its notebook with Nathan Drake fills that in as you go through.
That's a good one, that is, actually.
Red Dead Redemption 2 has it. Alan Wake uses Alan Wake 2 uses sort of a notebook function within those games as well that help you mark off the objective, mark off clues as you're going through the relative objectives there. So I could be wrong in saying it's the absolute first to use it, but it is, from my memory, the first one that was integrated within the game systems, within the active engine. It didn't require like a pause menu type thing, and was something you actively use within the game itself, rather than just a pause, look, I need to do this. It felt like you were looking at Rio's notebook, and then other games have obviously taken that on and used it. And I'm sure there's other games since that have used sort of notebooky type things within the system to act as the sort of quest or objective markers as you go through them.
Yeah, like it sort of naturally updates as well. So talking to people, you hear that little ding, open your notebook, and then you've got some new notes to record. And yeah, I think Shenmue used that notebook to its benefit for obviously moving the quest forward. And if you turn the game off, come back the next day or a week later or whatever, you can sort of pick up from where you left off just by checking the last few pages of your notes. So it's almost like a record of what you've done in the game. Whereas like maybe in other games that had a quest log or a notebook type thing, it would only really show you what your current objective is. Whereas like Shenmue's gives you the ability to sort of go back in time a bit and think like, oh yeah, that's how, that was the breadcrumb for what I'm doing 12 pages later type of thing. It's good use of that sort of thing. And obviously a lot of people like to do the complete notebook run where they try and get every note and keep speaking to Lapis for the clue notes and all that sort of stuff. But I think that is a good one to sort of include in this list. I think it definitely has influenced. I know you specifically named some games there, Matt, but you definitely do see a better integration of notes and quest log updates and all this sort of stuff that could possibly find the roots all the way back to Shenmue, in our opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
I did have one for NPC schedules. We sort of covered that with the day and the night sort of thing, so I'll move on from that. But that was another one that we did cite as a specific influence on its own. Moving into scaled, fully voiced dialogue here. So definitely for me, obviously there was games that had cutscenes that were voiced, but majority of games I played previously or prior to this were either text-based or, the odd little voice here and there. It was talking about Shenmue now. The entire game is voiced, completely voiced, barring Rio's notebook. That's the only text in the game, right? Everything else is fully voiced. So from the first second you start that game, Rio sees Ine-san, Fuka-san, his father, Landy, every single character voiced. In the main world, walking down into Dobuita, talking to Nozomi, fully voiced. going all the way back to Sakuroko, just talking to a random character for absolutely no reason at all. You've got no purpose to talk to this character. No one sent you to, go speak to John down the road. You've literally just gone out your way and just decided to speak to John if you wanted to. Not that there's a character called John, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
And John has brand new dialogue for you that for some reason they decided to program that in and have every single character. So in Shenmue 1, I think there's like 337 characters. Every single character has some sort of a dialogue, and if you go back to that character, depending where you are in the story, Ryo will ask that character a question that he's looking for an answer for, and that individual character might have a similar sort of answer, but will have a unique sounding answer, a unique voice. Those voices, in a sense, also helped to make, again, the world feel a lot more alive. You know that when you speak to Abe at the Abe store, she's going to have this voice that's going to, be very much familiar with Ryo, call him little suede-headed Ryo, whatever. You're going to get that sort of that type of dialogue from speaking to her. Whereas if you go and speak to someone at Nagai Industries, obviously they're going to be more standoffish. But you can still ask them the same sort of question, like where's the flower shop or something. You know what I mean? All these questions that Ryo has along his journey, each individual character may have an answer for, or its own unique dialogue for. So again, I'd be hesitant to say of any other game prior to Shenmue that sort of did it before Shenmue. I think Shenmue was possibly the first, because you mentioned this before, right, Matt, when you talking to some of the people that you spoke to on your interview series, that Shenmue is like the first AAA game because of what it implemented in the game that no other game had not even had the budget to do at that time. Like, Shenmue's the most expensive game ever made at the time for a reason, because a lot of that budget went into all of these systems and things that they've included here, and one of those is like, we absolutely must have a voice for every single character and unique dialogue for every single character at all times throughout the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like, even now, you look at games and NPCs, they might change a little bit, but Shenmue was very deliberate. It was very deliberate in its execution. As the quest went on, the NPC dialogue would change, and all the voices and all the lines for the NPCs around you would change. So you've got a massive job there in terms of scaling it for voice acting for both Japanese and English. Obviously, at the time, they weren't available on the same disc because there probably wasn't the room. Obviously, now we have the benefit of much bigger storage you can put on the Japanese and English dubs. But to have something scaled and fully voiced on the level that Shenmue was, and to the detail that Shenmue was, even now is insane. It's absolutely insane. But you look like you play an Assassin's Creed or something like that. You'll walk past an NPC, they'll say hello. You walk past an NPC again 10 minutes later, having done a quest, they'll say hello. Mm-hmm. Shenmue, that is different. It's contextual. It makes sense to the quest part you're at the time. And that's where it lies in a massive difference. But also, I think as well, where some games will look to that and go, well, it's not really needed. We can do that in other ways and maybe cost us money doing it potentially as well. But again, it's part of Shenmue, and it was I think in my head, and I could be wrong, but the first game to fully implement voice acting across everything. And that's where it stands out and where it influences even now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned other games there with, the characters just kind of feel dead, don't they? Apart from the main characters that they sort of suggested are the main characters, like all the town folks that when you visit these towns in Assassin's Creed, absolutely no one in that town is memorable.
No.
Whereas like Shenmue, even down to the most minor of side characters, you can think of and put a face to or put a voice to. You know what I mean? You might not know the name, but you know who I'm talking about when I say, like, oh, the little lady sweeping the pavement at the top of Yamanose. You know who I mean. You might not know a name, Sumi-san or whatever, but you know what I mean? It's a character that serves absolutely no real purpose other than just being there in the world. But the face is recognisable. Every model is unique in that sense. The voice is recognisable when she talks. I've got a little bit of a game later for you, Matt, but we'll put that to the test anyway, that theory.
Very good.
But I suppose there's probably loads more elements to Shenmue that we may have missed and we haven't really touched upon there. But I think those are possibly the most major aspects of Shenmue that have clearly defined elements that have been influenced in future titles. And our last sort of point that I've got down here is basically the culmination of everything together, creating this open world sandbox type experience. All of the NPCs, the scheduling, the day and the night cycle, the weather, the notebook, the QTEs, all of this stuff together with the insane detail levels, the cherry blossoms in April. Even though it's a small world, the sheer scale of the details that the developers implemented in this game just add so much to this open world game that it just sort of stands the test of time even today. It might feel a little bit clunky control wise. Perhaps the control's not really influenced.
Yeah, maybe not.
Anything moving forward. Maybe the camera, maybe being able to move the camera with the thumbstick could be something you could think as an influence. The fact that you can walk with the D-pad or one set of controls and turn the camera at the same time with the other. But I think all those points we've just sort of tallied up together there, the culmination of them is what makes Shenmue so special and why it can be considered such an influence, I think, on some of the games that we're going to be talking about a little bit now, Matt. So we've come up with a list of games that we think have been influenced by these sort of qualities that we've just mentioned, Matt. If you maybe you want to talk a little bit about some of these games that we've got on this list here and why.
So we'll start with Heavy Rain. I'm also going to add in Fahrenheit or Indigo Prophecy that use QTEs.
Great game.
Great game. Indigo Prophecy, Fahrenheit, and then obviously Heavy Rain later on.
I love Heavy Rain. I love all the David Cage games, to be fair.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But they heavily rely on QTEs for pretty much all of their cutscenes. There is some form of QTE element to it, or if you're investigating, there's a QTE. Then you have to open a cupboard. It will say push R or whatever. So it very much took on that concept of QTEs. Maybe made them their own in some aspects, which is great. I completely get that. But then again, other games went and used QTEs. I think Uncharted uses them for some aspects of some of the aspects of the action scenes within the game as well. The amount of games these days that use QTE inputs, the list is huge. Spider-Man on the PS4, PS5 uses I could reel off games left, right, and centre, but Heavy Rain's the one that really stands out for that. And Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy is the one that really stands out as the next sort of real big implementation of it from my personal experience. And they're good games as well. Bloody good games, actually.
Yeah, really good. Beyond Two Souls, really good as well.
Yes,
Detroit, obviously, is his latest.
Fantastic.
I don't know if he's working. I think they are working on a new one, aren't they, right? Are they working on a Star Wars? I feel like I remember hearing something about a Star Wars game.
I'd be interested
developed
to play
by
that,
Quantic Dreams.
I'll play that.
Might need to fact check me on that, guys. But just as you were thinking there, Matt, so we mentioned David Cage. Obviously, we're going to talk about some people that we think have been influenced, but I did just think, crap, we haven't really thought about David Cage, actually, apart from that little reference to Heavy Rain there. But I've just pulled this up from Push Square. So this is an interview actually conducted by Ryan Payton. So
I remember this.
Pretty cool, yeah. So it says, there's no denying that Dreamcast classic Shenmue and Heavy Rain share similarities. While the two titles are set in completely different worlds, they both aspire to the same cinematic goals. As such, this interview conducted by Camouflage developer Ryan Payton is particularly fascinating. In it, both Sega legend Yu Suzuki and Quantic Dream founder David Cage discuss their approaches to game development and also touch upon the divisive nature of QuickTime events. So in the clip, so this must be a video, but it does say video unavailable, unfortunately, and I hope that's just an embedded problem and it hasn't been lost. Got to be there somewhere, yeah. In the clip, Cage explains that he was working on PlayStation 2's adventure Fahrenheit, also known as Indigo Prophecy, at the time of Shenmue's launch. When Shenmue released, I thought that we followed the same process and the same thinking, he says. We found different solutions, but I thought that we were looking for the same thing, to tell an interactive story. So, yeah, perhaps not so much at the time influenced by Shenmue, but you can see the clear sort of mindset of these two developers at the time that were sort of aiming for similar things. I'm pretty sure by the time that Heavy Rain did eventually come out, Shenmue definitely would have influenced how
Yeah.
Or perhaps not Heavy Rain as such, because we were talking about Fahrenheit there. I'm thinking like by the time Fahrenheit was released, I think Shenmue probably did serve as a bit of a tool to sort of tailor what they were working on at the time for Indigo Prophecy Fahrenheit and make it even better, actually, I'd have thought.
I would think so. And the way he talks about Shenmue there, it sounds like a fondness for it, almost like a level of respect for it, considering they were trying to do, I guess, largely the same thing, but in very different interpretations of the worlds they were trying to build. Obviously, the Fahrenheit, the Heavy Rain worlds are a lot smaller, but they are also very well detailed and tell a really good story. And obviously, it does borrow elements from Shenmue, and I think having David Cage and Yu Suzuki in the same room, almost visionaries, but got to their visions in different ways, is just fantastic. And there's a level of respect there that I think games industry people have for Shenmue, and that's just one person obviously shows that, and probably feeds into the next point, actually.
Well, just before you move on there, Matt, I was also thinking Nomad Soul Omnicrom. That was David Cage, wasn't it? That was Quantic Dreams. And that was very much an open world type of game.
It was just before Shenmue, wasn't it?
Yeah, not on the same scale of Shenmue, but I did remember playing Nomad Soul and getting those Shenmue sort of vibes where you can sort of run around this big open city, go into, the police officer's office. It's like a futuristic cop into kind of thing, like getting a taxi and travel somewhere. There's some really influential ideas in Nomad Soul. Obviously, it's not as well known as Shenmue, and obviously, I guess that's a factor for being an influence if no one's heard of it or no one's played it. But it was at the time a game that could have really been an influence to other games, even Shenmue. Like you say, it was released just before Shenmue. I don't know if there would have been enough time to influence Shenmue, but just thought I'd mention Nomad Soul with us talking about David Cage. Definitely worth a mention.
Yeah, it's definitely a good honourable mention to have there, isn't it? Because I think it's a game that probably gets lost in the shuffle very much when you talk about these open worldy type things. But again, it's probably, if you've got a Dreamcast or access to an emulator, it's well worth checking out. It's a good game.
I like it. Other games than Matt, you'd be just segueing into something.
So segueing off into Cyberpunk 2077. So there was a tweet put out, I think, from Gamescom 2019, where there's Yu Suzuki with a photo of somebody who's working on the Cyberpunk booth, and they say, "Thanks for making open world a thing." And there's a tweet about it. Somebody else then replied saying, "Yu Suzuki is one of the best things that ever happened to the video game industry, period." And they replied saying, "True." So that says all you need to know about the level of respect and influence that Yu Suzuki and Shenmue had on one of the biggest games of this generation and even the last generation, the impact it's had on that game, and them recognizing the work that Yu Suzuki did all the way back starting in the mid-90s, which is mental. So yeah, and again, this is just another symptom, I think, of what I keep saying. I think people who have worked in the industry, worked on games, know what Shenmue did. And this is just an example of it.
Yeah, lovely to see that. And also they sent him a nice collector's edition box, didn't they, as a bit of a gift, as a bit of a thank you. I guess, like you say, thank you for open world gaming.
And that's really cool, isn't it?
The granddaddy.
They didn't have to do that, but they did do that, and that, I really like that. That's again shows a level of respect for Yu Suzuki that I think is completely warranted, if I'm completely honest with you.
Yeah, definitely agree. So next game we've got Red Dead Redemption, Matt. Red Dead Redemption 2 game.
Yeah, specifically Red Dead 2 more than one, in terms of several options actually. The world building, the day-night cycles, the weather system there is really cool, really, really good. You also have the notebook, which Arthur Morgan uses as you go through. I've mentioned obviously other games do that as well. But he'll note down his objectives, maps and things within his notebook. You also have the ability to go into shops and sort of pick up items and look at them and purchase them, which I think is, again, a really cool element to that game. And also, while NPCs, you can't talk to them all in the way you talk to Shenmue NPCs, they do change their dialogue depending on your actions and where you are in the story as well. So if you've gone up and massacred a town, they're going to be scared of you and run away and scream and go, "No, get away from me," and all this. But if you've been all right, you've been, law abiding or whatever, they'll go, oh, hello, how you doing, and have those like little like tidbits of world building that I think is pretty cool as well. So yeah, that definitely has lent into Shenmue, albeit not quite on the scale of some of the aspects that Shenmue did it in, but a really good implementation in the world building for Red Dead 2.
Yeah,
good game.
definitely worth a mention. I remember in issue 2 of Shenmue World, there was a guy that did an article for it, Dan Crowther.
Oh, yes.
He mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2 as being like one of those games that he sort of fell in love with. And I think because of that level of detail that had obviously spilt over into Red Dead Redemption, he actually got into Shenmue from that type of game. I forget the article, I'll have to give it another read, but I'm pretty sure this is just from my own memory that he hadn't really gotten into Shenmue, and then he sort of played Red Dead 2 and then gone back to Shenmue, I think, and just got this extra level of respect and appreciation for what Shenmue is trying to accomplish in that world building, that detail, probably even more so than Red Dead 2's world, because of how well defined it was and detailed that we've just spoken about. But yeah, just something I thought about when we were talking about Red Dead 2 there. There is clear implications of it having an effect of Shenmue, because there's someone that's then gone on to enjoy Shenmue because of Red Dead 2.
Yeah, and that's more of the same, please. That's we'd love that, to sort of people look and go, oh, I wonder where this came from, and then sort of make their way back to Shenmue. But maybe people will now with this BAFTA thing. They'll look at it and go, let's see what it actually did, and see if they can make the link between what Shenmue did and then the systems that are in games now.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they go in with it with the context of the period that it was released. Obviously, you're talking 99. You can't go in expecting to play a Yakuza 8 Infinite Wealth game, if you know what I mean. It's not going to have the finesse of that modern day game. But if you go in with the knowledge that this is the game that kickstarted it all, almost, and it might not play the best, it might not control the best, but it does a damn great job of considering the technological limitations at the time, of still feeling like a modern day game. Like, you could just pick up the remasters, and just enjoy them today, can't you? It's not like it's a massive obstacle to play them, and I think they have stood the test of the time in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of Yakuza,
you can't go. If you got influence, you've got to mention this.
Exactly, and obviously we do have some clear influences because of the person that owns this property, or used to own this game. Well, obviously Sega own it, but the guy that was behind it back in the day, Nagoshi-san, worked on Shenmue, and then obviously went on to work on Yakuza. So there's some very clear influences and inspirations that have spilt over into the Yakuza series. Matt, both big fans of it.
Yeah, I love it.
Probably you so more than me, but yeah, I mean, talk us about maybe start the original PS2 Yakuza and what you thought when you played that for the first time. Obviously, to me, and probably to you, I think you mentioned this in the past, it felt like a downgrade from Shenmue.
Yeah.
But what it did do, you can't deny the Shenmue influence.
No.
That's why they were compared so much back in the day as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you play the original games on PS2, which I did, and I went into it thinking, oh, this would be like Shenmue, but it wasn't. And it took me a while to get my head round that this isn't Shenmue, this is something else, and I had to appreciate it for what it was doing. And it told a very, very good story. I think I'd argue from a comparative standpoint, it became closer to the Shenmue series around Yakuza 3 in terms of the presentation, but that's just the way it was. But you can see the clear influence here that it borrows, especially in the later games with the camera angles, the dialogue, the mini games, and everything else that you go ahead and do. They've always been like, people go, oh, Yakuza's a better Shenmue, but they're so different in the way they present themselves. They're cousins. They're of the same family, but they're like distant cousins off somewhere. They borrow some elements of DNA, but have gone off and done their own thing. Obviously, Yakuza Like a Dragon has been wildly successful now after a real push by Sega to make it successful. I wish Shenmue would have got some of that, frankly, but alternate timeline and all that, maybe we would have done. But you can't deny how good those games are and the Shenmue influence across all of the Yakuza series. Yeah, and RGG now I would argue Sega's premier studio, because of all the groundwork that came from Shenmue. When you look at how they develop their games at RGG, you have people working on several games at a time, but they do like mini games. That's all they do for several games at a time. You look at the interview we covered in the last podcast we put together, the Getting the Band Back Together podcast. They talk about that working across Shenmue, they were working across several games within the series at one time. So that, for me, is like a learned thing from Shenmue as well in terms of the development cycle for those Yakuza Like a Dragon games, which has obviously then moved things on in their development cycle. So it's not just the gameplay element. I think it's influenced how they developed the games themselves. But I mean, Toshihiro Nagoshi talks about that in some depth, but we'll come on to him shortly, I'm sure.
For sure. GTA 3, we got a little brief mention of here. Obviously, I'd assume that they'd probably already began work on GTA 3, but I do feel like I remember that they specifically called out Shenmue and said that, like, because of what Shenmue did, it allowed them to do some other things, or they thought about doing things differently in GTA 3. I'm sure I've read something about that, Matt.
Yeah, I think it showed them the open world and it can work, and sort of gave them the confidence to really go all in on this. I don't know how true this is. I read a rumor years ago that they were going to make GTA 3 in 2D, saw Shenmue and thought, shit, we need to make it in 3D. But I don't know how true that is, frankly. But what I do think it did for GTA 3, and then obviously subsequent titles, will show that the open world could work. And then they go, right, okay, we're all in on this. We can see the excitement around an open world here, and have obviously then gone and done their own take on it. And now GTA is wildly popular, successful. GTA 5 has spanned the PS3, the PS4, the PS5. It's had a ray tracing update on bloody PC and everything else. And GTA
Even a
6
playable version on Dreamcast.
Yeah, playable versions on Dreamcast of GTA 3 now as well. And GTA 6 is going to be the biggest game of all time when it comes out. It's going to go absolutely bananas, so much so that everybody's trying to avoid when it comes out, because you know your game's going to get swallowed by it.
True.
So yeah, there you are.
Shenmue 4 then, eh?
Wow.
that week.
Hopefully not, although it could be a good thing in some ways.
Maybe so. I don't know. That's probably our luck, though.
Yeah, probably is our luck.
So that's kind of the sort of the big AAA type experiences that we've just spoken about that have been clearly influenced by Shenmue, in my opinion, and even directly say so themselves. But we're going to move into sort of like indie developed projects now, and most notably, I want to point this out because this is shaping into be a really great looking game, fantastic game.
Yeah.
It's getting quite a lot of buzz around it whenever I see the guys post tweets about this or articles. A lot of people seem to be excited for the release of this, and this is a game from a Shenmue fan.
Yes, we met him, I think, in Monaco many years ago.
Met him in Monaco, great guy. He's coming out with a game called Incombini.
Yes, which is essentially a supermarket or tomato mart simulator, but I mean that in the nicest possible way, in that you run a convenience store, filling the shelves, doing your day-to-day tasks. I'm sure there's a story to it as well, but like you say, James, there's a real level of excitement around it, and like the detail of how you stack the shelves is cool. You can like make patterns with the objects you put on the shelves, and I don't know, it does appeal to that mundane side of the Shenmue franchise that we really like. I think it's that sort of thing it appeals to, but in a really cool way. I can't wait to play it. I know it's been in development for a couple of years, and I'm quite excited to get my hands on it and play it. To be honest, I'd be half tempted to stream it, you know. It looks fun.
I reckon so, yeah. I reckon maybe we can get Dimitri on the show as well and maybe interview him a little bit about it, because obviously it's been clearly influenced by Shenmue because of how much he loves Shenmue, and it does look fantastic. I think the tagline is one store, many stories. So you're going to get these unique characters coming into your store, and there's going to be some sort of storytelling quest system maybe going on there, which is, it's just going to be heartwarming. I think it looks to be a really nice, just a nice sort of sit down comfort type of game. It's not going to get you too involved shooting zombies and, you know, action packed. It's just more mellowed. It just gives some nice sort of Shenmue vibes, like mellow vibes, which, you know, I'm really looking forward to myself. But yeah, I think it's pretty much a nice, well-rounded list of games there that we feel have been clearly inspired or, you know, influenced by Shenmue.
Yeah.
Shenmue, like we say, is not necessarily the first to do any of these things, but it's the game that popularised the use of them in future titles by how well, Yu Suzuki and the team are able to execute and implement a lot of these systems that gamers just take for granted in games today. And I think that's probably why a lot of people were surprised when Shenmue came out number one, because one, maybe they'd never heard of the game before, or two, they don't really understand what Shenmue did and what it was able to achieve back in 1999 that, like I say, they just sort of take for granted these days.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that.
Yeah, but we're going to have a music break now, and when we come back, we're going to ask AI what it thinks about Shenmue and its inspiration. We don't really use AI tools too much because obviously it's a bit of controversy surrounding that, but I just thought it might be quite fun to ask ChatGPT or whatever it's called why it thinks Shenmue is an influence on the games and why it may have won this BAFTA award. So stick around, we're going to do that in a moment, but we're going to play one of your pieces of music, Matt, that you chose.
Okay, so this is from Anadil, and this is a remake of the Coolsy Boombox theme, which has been HD'd up. You can actually understand it all now, so have a listen.
You hit the man in the front, you fight the leather attack. You hit the man on the left because I'm down with drink. You hit the man in the front, you fight the leather attack. You hit the man on the left because I'm down with drink. Hey you, I don't know you, but I'ma stay to you. I hate you, don't walk around here. I'm gonna take away from everything. This guy ride, don't give me a ride. You hit the man in the front, you fight the leather attack. You hit the man on the left because I'm down with drinking. Fight the leather attack, you hit the man on the left because I'm down with drink. You hit the man in the front, you fight the leather attack. You hit the man on the left because I'm down with drink. Hey you, I don't know you, but I'ma stay to you. I hate you, don't walk around here. I'm gonna take away from everything. This guy ride, don't give me a ride. You hit the man in the front, you fight the leather attack. You hit the man on the left because I'm down with drinking.
Welcome back, guys. That was Anadil's upgraded Coolsy mix there of his theme. Really cool. It's come out really nice. I think that one, very much a high definition one, not so much muffled in the background like it used to be. Right, Matt, so we said we were going to ask AI why it thinks Shenmue is so influential, and I'm just going to read this off basically word for word.
Cool.
And just see if you agree with it essentially, and especially like the game choices it mentions. So when we ask the question, AI turns around and says, yes, Shenmue was a trailblazer in several ways, and it definitely introduced mechanics and design ideas that influenced many future games. Released in 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast, it was a technical and conceptual leap forward. Here are some of the things that Shenmue pioneered or popularised. Open world realism and interactivity. So it has these categories, and then it sort of says what Shenmue did and what the influence was. So what Shenmue did. It created a highly detailed, realistic open world with a living town, daily schedules for NPCs, weather systems, and real-time day/night cycles. Influence. Games like GTA 3, Yakuza, The Elder Scrolls, and even Red Dead Redemption 2 built on this immersive realism with living NPCs and environmental details. Fair point. Next up, QTEs, QuickTime Events. So, what Shenmue did? It popularised QTEs, button prompts during cutscenes or action moments that required time inputs. Influence. QTEs became a staple in games like God of War, Resident Evil 4, Heavy Rain, and Tomb Raider. Pretty much what we
it's pretty much
spoke about.
Agree with that as well.
Yep. Slice of life gameplay. What Shenmue did. Players had to wait for buzzes, go to work, visit the arcade, or even buy capsule toys. It blended mundane daily life with storytelling. Influence. This inspired elements in Persona, Animal Crossing, Yakuza, and even Death Stranding in terms of grounding gameplay in routine or real-world tasks.
Yeah, I'd
pretty much agree with that as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Kind of forgot about like just the waiting for buzzes. That was kind of another
Yeah, I did.
unnecessary system, but it just added to the world. Voice acting and cinematic presentation. What Shenmue did. It was one of the first games with fully voiced dialogue and extensive cutscenes for every character interaction. Very ambitious at the time, it says. Influence. It helped push the industry forward towards more cinematic storytelling and full voiceovers, which are now standard in AAA games. So again, pretty much kind of what we said.
Yeah.
Which is good to see. Computers agree. Final one, inventory and object inspection. What Shenmue did. Allowed close-up examination of objects in 3D space, turning things around, checking the details. Influence. Later echoed in detective games like LA Noire, Resident Evil remakes, and The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. It says, so yep, Shenmue was kind of like the weird uncle of modern open world and narrative driven games. A bit quirky, way ahead of its time, but massively influential. So, I'm actually quite pleased with how that came out. I don't want to give AI credit,
Careful.
but credit where credit's due. I think it kind of nailed that section, and it sort of summed it up a lot quicker than we did, Matt.
I think it got it. Yeah, in very, very well summarised. Actually, I don't think I'd argue with most of it. In fairness, I think it's pretty good.
No, what would be interesting, and this is something I'm not going to do now, but I might consider now I've got the idea in my head. But if you asked the same question, but added a different game, do you think it would say, well, actually, it didn't? Shenmue was the first, or do you think it would try and come up with a reasonable answer, pushing the narrative of that game that you said, if you know what I mean? So, like if I said Astrobot, what is it influenced? And obviously, Astrobot's a modern game, or a very new game within the release in the last year or two. Is it really going to give me bullet points like that? Not sure.
We'll find out, but I wouldn't. It'd give you some, but I wouldn't have thought it'd be on the level of what Shenmue did. Where Astrobot is absolutely fantastic. Go and play it if you haven't already.
And on that same note, if I was then to say Yakuza, do you think it would say or mention Shenmue at all? Interesting.
It should do.
It should do, but I'm not sure on that. But just thought I'd throw that out there. But very much agree with the AI. Thank you very much, Mr. Computer. Or Grok, that the cool kids call these days.
Yeah.
Is it Grok?
It's on X, isn't it, Grok?
X Grok, yeah. But anyway, guys, we're gonna now take some of the people that have actually mentioned Shenmue and actually cited it as an influence. So we're going to start with Matt. Toshihiro Nagoshi, obviously the Yakuza series, he's well known.
Yeah.
Creating that series and all the titles that have then followed. Obviously, he doesn't actually work for Sega anymore.
No.
But he was possibly the biggest sort of head at Sega at the time. After Yu Suzuki left Sega, this Nagoshi guy probably took over sort of the reins of that Sega face in a sense. Obviously, you've got Yuji Naka as well. Always had sort of that face for Sega with Sonic. But when you're thinking of like a Japanese face to match a success on a Sega console, after Yu Suzuki, you probably think of Nagoshi-san.
Yeah, I think you probably do.
So there's a blog post here I've got a link for that's Phantom Riverstone, that I do encourage you to read the blog post because it is really interesting. And it's actually an interview, I think, with Hisashi Suzuki, who I believe worked on Shenmue as well, because, well, actually, before I get onto that, there is a mention here. So this was a thing, actually. So if you recall, I think it was the last show, getting the Gang Back Together show, we mentioned about screenwriters,
yes,
all these individuals that sort of came into the development studio to sort of maybe just to have a look at Shenmue or sort of share their thoughts and feelings to sort of make the game better at the time. But we did hint at Steven Spielberg, and this might be the interview where I got it from, because as I was reading this, I was like, oh, that's that image of Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Looking at Shenmue on the screen with these like Mark Cerny sat next to him, Yu Suzuki in the background. This Hisashi Suzuki is standing next to Yu Suzuki apparently, but he's sort of hinting here that he might be responsible for actually Shenmue as a project commencing. So this is the Virtua Fighter RPG days, and he says that Spielberg did a tour of Sega, I believe when he was in Japan to promote a movie. He himself owned a game company called GamesWorks. Nakayama led the way as they walked around the development offices, and when he showed Virtua Fighter RPG to Spielberg, he said that's wonderful, and that pleased Nakayama so much that he gave the direction to start development on it in earnest. So that's a really cool little tidbit there, that maybe Steven Spielberg is the reason why we got Shenmue
greenlit
today, apparently. But it is this Hisashi Suzuki that actually was sort of sent in alongside Nagoshi-san to put a stop to Shenmue. So obviously it was getting out of hand. Nagoshi apparently came to him and said, if things go on as they are, Shenmue's development's going to go on forever, so let's stop him. And he says, so it was brought to an end. So whilst he was the one who decided the project's end, Hisashi Suzuki rates Shenmue itself extremely highly. He says Shenmue's concept was wonderful. It was something whose creation was only possible with the Sega of that time, and it's because there was Shenmue that Nagoshi was able to create Yakuza. Yakuza is a Sega-like creation. Sega must always provide something new, he says. So definitely check that out. Did I copy and paste all this to you, by the way, Matt?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Okay, so there's that bit at the bottom there. This is a good article as well, that Medium one. I would highly recommend reading the Medium article.
I would. I've read it before, actually, thinking about it, and it's the quote he sort of comes out here. He says, "It was a moment where Nagoshi had to come up with the idea to save Japanese game development industry along with other talented developers. It was that period where Yakuza would finally see the light of day. In the end, Yakuza wouldn't come up without Nagoshi paying tribute to Yu Suzuki as being one of the few people who influenced him throughout his entire career." And it's quoted here, "No one has had a greater influence on me making games than Yu Suzuki."
Says it all, doesn't it?
Says it all, doesn't it? Like, people can bitch and complain about Shenmue's influence all they like. One of the most popular franchises that Sega have today is heavily laced with Shenmue. And Nagoshi, who created it, very open in saying that they learnt a lot from Shenmue, they learnt a lot from the cinematics, they learnt a lot from all of it and the approach, and his influence for Yu Suzuki and making games is there. So enough said really on that one. It's clear as day.
Yeah, well, you got to think at the time as well, Yu Suzuki's already got all these arcade titles under his belt, successes with the Virtua Fighter. Must be such an inspiration to Nagoshi-san, who was such a young up-and-coming game developer at the time, or working in the industry there. He's actually working under Yu Suzuki, and just some of the things that he must have learned just by watching the master at work and watching some of the stuff that they were able to create with the Virtua Fighter series, etc. Definitely is one of the reasons why he's come out with that quote, I would have thought, because Yu Suzuki, again, this sort of granddaddy, you can almost see them coming into work together and having this such a great respect for someone like Yu Suzuki, who's had all this success under his belt, spearheading a lot of the success at Sega along sort of the 90s or whatever. And you've got Nagoshi-san, sort of this up-and-coming guy, and definitely must have looked up to him, I'd have thought. Yeah,
without a doubt. You've got a man there who, at the height of his career at Sega, was a superstar. He, some of the most influential video games of all time, Virtua Racing, Virtua Fighter. You've got somebody there who really should be held in a massively high esteem, and hopefully will be his career. Obviously, Yu Suzuki now is well into his 60s, and I'm sure will think about retirement at some point. Maybe not quite yet, hopefully, but it's always when people retire, then you look back at their career and go, actually, do you know what? They really did have an influence. And I hope that doesn't happen to Yu Suzuki. I think people need to recognize it now, just for his influence on games as a whole, not just Shenmue. But at the time, can you imagine working under Yu Suzuki, this megastar, and learning from him and learning how to make games from somebody like him? That experience is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And while I take issue with how he was treated at Sega after Shenmue and how he was mothballed and basically almost unceremoniously given the boot unfairly, you can't deny that he is responsible for some of Sega's biggest titles, and the DNA of what he created back in the 90s is in Sega's titles to this day. So they owe a lot to Yu Suzuki at Sega, and I just wish they would recognise it a little bit more.
You'd have hoped so. Like you say, Yakuza's a bit of a cash cow for them at the moment. Hopefully Virtua Fighter 6 and whatever the plans are there also turn into a little bit of a cash cow for them. And yeah, those stem from Yu Suzuki, naturally. Next sort of developer, sort of person in the game industry, Matt, that we've not necessarily got a quote from, but he's been seen pictured alongside Yu Suzuki. He's been very fond of Shenmue in the past, makes a mention about Shenmue 3, right? And this is a guy, he goes by a couple of names. I don't know. Do you know what his actual name is? Is it Hidetaka?
Hidetaka Suehiro?
Suehiro, yeah, but he goes by the name of Swery65.
Yes. So to cut a long story short, he's the creator of Deadly Premonition. I'm sure people have heard of those games from back in the day. And he said that Shenmue's been an influence. He loves those games, realistic worlds, and the characters that feel alive and have their own NPC sort of scheduling. And he'd been pictured with Yu Suzuki, like having dinner and going out for drinks with him. I think they're good friends actually now as well. And he also named Shenmue 3 as one of his favourite games in 2019, despite its flaws. So there's a clear level of respect for Shenmue and what it brought to the table, albeit some of the quotes are quite difficult to find from him. He's a little bit of one of these aloof developers, but
yeah.
Again, there's just further sort of evidence that Shenmue and Yu Suzuki influenced another developer.
Yeah, and I definitely do think they're good friends, Matt, because if you recall, it's the Swery guy that came out with a Kickstarter for a game called The Good Life.
Ah, yes.
And I do remember Yu Suzuki, I think he even posted this on the WiseNet account, like, go back this game or something, in it. There's few words as that. I don't know if he said that exactly, but he was basically advertising his friend's Kickstarter game. So they definitely got a good relationship, and you can only assume that maybe even each other inspire them.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like sort of a mutual influence on each of their own games, which is nice to see. Definitely. So next up, another guy managed to find a little bit of a quote from is a guy called Steve Gaynor.
Ah, yes.
Who apparently made Gone Home, and he is a Tacoma developer. So co-director of Tacoma, writer and designer of Gone Home. Yeah, we've got a link here. All the links, obviously, guys, will be in the show notes if you want to check these out. But this is an article that was posted on VG247.com. Steve Gaynor, writer and director of Gone Home, co-director of Tacoma. It's not an innovative choice, but my favourite Dreamcast game is Shenmue, he says, for a few different reasons. I love the very real-world, mundane settings of 1980s Tokyo. This approach to a game setting and feel really hadn't been done before on Shenmue's scale. Being in the small part of the city where you start out has such a feeling of place and realness. It's transportive by being so understated. Shenmue was a direct influence on Fulbright's first game, Gone Home. I replayed Shenmue early on in making Gone Home, and I loved exploring Ryu's house at the beginning of the game. The feeling of being there, and the satisfaction of opening drawers and closets all through the house to see what was inside, and seeing all the little mundane details of the character's living space right where they should be. That was huge for me. I also love Shenmue because it led directly to the Yakuza series, which is another set of games that I absolutely adore. They're much bigger and flashier and more over the top, but you can see that Shenmue DNA that carried over into the original Yakuza and then into the rest of the series and Judgment. It's wild that almost 20-year legacy Shenmue has had, which is more than that now at the time of this article, and I'm grateful that such a strange and unique but small and self-contained thing was released all those years ago. So awesome to see that. That's a really good quote, actually.
Yeah, that's very, very
it,
complimentary of Shenmue, and obviously it's now 25 years, which is scary. But yeah, that's a really cool quote from somebody who has a lot of time and respect for Shenmue. And then we move down a little bit here. So Street Fighter 6, James, you'll remember this one as well. And Flagship certainly will, because he's a massive Virtua Fighter Street Fighter 6 fan. Takayuki Nakayama for Street Fighter 6. This is an interview from GameRant.com. And the interviewer indirectly brought up Shenmue similarities to Street Fighter 6. And Nakayama stated that while it isn't a direct influence, it was possible that it was in the back of the team's mind when they worked on the game. Nakayama notes how influential Shenmue was, stating it had a big impact on him. With the similarities between Shenmue and Virtua Fighter, I've got Virtua Fighter in my head. I want to play it.
Easy done.
Street Fighter 6, however, he jokes that the team could have added a couple of capsule toys for the player to collect, much like in the former game. Nakayama reiterates that the World Tour mode is going to defy genre labels. Hopes the interviewer, who was a big fan of Shenmue, tries it out as well. So I've played a little bit of the World Tour mode, and I can see the vibes from it, from Shenmue for sure.
Yeah. What does it allow you to do then, Max? I've not actually played it.
You can explore around the world. You sort of bump into fights and things as you walk around. You can sort of buy items as you go interact with NPCs. It's not quite on the scale of Shenmue by any stretch, but it's got those vibes of it, and the setting has got a Shenmue vibe to it. I think it's an indirect influence, I guess, but also Nakayama says himself that Shenmue was very influential. So again, this is sort of the reoccurring theme, isn't it?
Yeah.
The people in the industry who've been there a long time know how influential Shenmue is and was. And this is, again, why we wanted to do the show, because it shows, I think, just how many people in the industry hold Shenmue in such a high regard. And then, James, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I mean, just have a brief mention, Matt, while we're talking about fighting games, but not necessarily Shenmue directly, although I'm sure it's one of the games he's probably fond of as well. But Harada-san from obviously the Tekken, you pulled up a couple of articles here where he's sort of seen pictured with Yu Suzuki, has a good admiration for Yu Suzuki and what he did with the Virtua Fighter series.
Yeah, he talks about obviously his early career, and then sort of as Virtua Fighter came out, that was sort of like a watershed moment for Harada-san there, with like how he then wanted to obviously make Tekken, because that was a direct influence. He saw Virtua Fighter and was like, right, okay, I need to step up to the plate here. This is groundbreaking. And he was very much, for years, going tit for tat with Virtua Fighter in terms of trying to outdo each other, which I thought was like a nice, healthy, respectful competition between two iconic franchises. The level of respect he holds Yu Suzuki is clear to see in these blog posts and interviews that have been put out there. And I think a few years ago, before they announced like this whole Virtua Fighter revival, he tweeted out Harada-san saying that he'd love to go up against Virtua Fighter again with Tekken, because he holds it in such a high regard. And when people were campaigning for like Tekken to put Virtua Fighter characters in the game, he was like, no, we want a proper Virtua Fighter. We don't want to put them in my game. I want a proper Virtua Fighter because I want to play it and I want to go up against it. That says all you need to know about the regard that he holds Yu Suzuki in and Virtua Fighter in, and that level of respect and influence that it had on him and continues to have on him, and the respect he holds it in even now.
Yeah, definitely big advocate for Virtua Fighter, isn't he? Which
massive.
He's one of the biggest voices for asking for a new Virtua Fighter. I've seen it pop up quite a bit on Twitter. Prior to Virtua Fighter 6 getting announced, he was getting up behind Virtua Fighter, the next title in the series there. And probably the last one we'll come on to now. There's probably more out there, guys. I mean, if you find some other people that we've missed, definitely let us know. Quotes and whatnot, and other games that you think have been inspired by Shenmue. But you may have remembered, we did speak about this a while back, I think, as well on one of the shows, or I've definitely spoke to you in the past, but there was a lot of tweets at one point going out where it was like, here's 4 games that have influenced my game. So in fact, you saw like the Overjump Rally guy, he cited obviously Shenmue, Sega Rally, and 2 others. Forget what else he picked, but you know what I mean. It's those type of tweets or those type of social media posts that were going quite viral actually for at least a week, I'd say. And one of those was a game for the Switch called On Your Tail. I haven't actually played it, but 4 games that influenced your game. On Your Tail guy has tweeted out that On Your Tail is a Shenmue-inspired slice of life plus detective game set in Italy. That was one of the tweets. Someone asked him, is this game similar to Shenmue? And he says, Shenmue is one of our main inspirations for the game, which is nice to see. And then another tweet, obviously the one that I mentioned where he's like saying what 4 games have influenced him. Shenmue is one of the 4, of course. So even today, there's indie developers working on games that have or hold Shenmue in such high regard. And you're sort of thinking, Matt, that sort of the age, or the typical, probably the average age of a Shenmue fan, probably coming into peak game development and everything they played as a kid ultimately inspired them or ultimately influenced them.
Yeah.
So it's probably not unusual that Shenmue comes up time and time again from these developers in the industry, because it was a game that they grew up with or they experienced at an age where they were very much there to be influenced. You know what I mean? Like, it was such a groundbreaking title. I think you've probably seen the sort of the turn of, I don't know, the turn of the age where game developers in the industry today, actively working on games, grew up playing Shenmue. So they might not flat out and say it this sort of style that some people do, where they're saying like these are clearly the 4 games that thingy, but Shenmue is probably something that they've got at the back of the head that they played as a kid, and those techniques and whatnot have evolved into other experiences that they played throughout the years, and then they're actively working on games now that take sort of bits and bobs out of all these experiences they've had throughout their life, and obviously Shenmue is a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even add to that, James. You've nailed that one.
Not eloquently, but I got it there in the end, whatever point I was trying to make. But yeah, hopefully that list, like I say, let us know, guys, if you've got more that you want to add to that list. But hopefully we've done a fairly decent job, I would say, of explaining and giving evidence. You know, we're not just flat out saying Shenmue, oh yeah, it's the most influential game. Why? Why is it? Hopefully we've done it a little bit of justice there. We've said why. We've explained it from a Shenmue fan's point of view. Even got bloody AI involved as well to sort of say the general consensus on Shenmue. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, guys. So obviously, Matt, we're talking about all these different people that have come out and expressed how Shenmue has influenced their game or potentially influenced their games. Quite a hefty amount of people. Obviously, it has touched and influenced. One person was recently asked, so this has come out from Easy Allies, who've spoken recently to Shuhei Yoshida, who's obviously kind of the face of Sony in a sense, or has been. I think he may have left Sony now, if I got that right.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But for the longest time, like, whenever, you know, you were hearing about a new game coming out, Shuei's face was sort of there and talking about it, or like I'm thinking like Astrobot, he was a big advocate for Astrobot or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Huber sort of straight up asks him, did he see Shenmue win the BAFTA? So I think it's very topical, actually, that we're talking about Shenmue and the BAFTAs and all these people with the influences. Shuei, on the other hand, didn't really see eye to eye with that, did he, Matt?
No, and I guess people aren't always going to, and that's fine. I think Yoshida-san almost sort of, I think he downplayed it more than anything else and focused in on the project itself around Shenmue and the amount of money that was spent on it, saying that obviously it contributed quite heavily to Sega, obviously almost being bankrupt. We all know that's not necessarily the case, because Sega made a bunch of decisions that cost a darn sight more money than Shenmue did. When you look at the hardware for the 32X, the Mega CD, the Sega Saturn, the amount of money that was spunked onto those alone, you know, it beggars belief that it just, again, I think that's just a little misconception around Shenmue a little bit. I think what he's probably leaning into a touch, and I could be wrong, this is sort of reading between the lines, is that there's probably games that came before Shenmue that he feels are arguably more influential, and I can understand that point and argument. There's a little fun thing about the tweetathon, which I'll come on to in a minute, but it did make me laugh. And he's actually Yoshida's... he's a good sport, actually. I'll leave it for now. But Huber makes a very interesting point. He says that what games do now probably don't realise that they borrow from Shenmue in some way, shape or form. Because what Shenmue essentially did, what Huber's saying, is that it brought a lot of things together in one game. It was essentially so far ahead of its time that now games just do what Shenmue did without even realising it. So they're all sort of indirectly influenced by it. And that's a very valid point. I think and some of the things we've touched on already, is that Shenmue wasn't necessarily the first thing to do it, but it was probably the first thing to bring these elements together in such an effective manner that it essentially gave that AAA template that we all know and love, and millions and millions of games have borrowed from. So I'd respectfully sort of disagree with Yoshida on that point. I think you can argue about his placing within that list of most influential game. Absolutely you can argue over that. And, you know, games like Mario 64, Virtua Fighter, is just two off the top of my head, would have an argument to be number one potentially. We know that. But I don't think you can deny its influence either directly or indirectly. But then, and I guess the funny thing is what his response was to the tweet. They talked about the Shenmue 4 campaign, Let's Get Shenmue 4, which I think is brilliant that it's getting raised on Easy Allies and podcasts like that. It shows that the gaming industry are aware of what's going on. And that in itself is fantastic because it means there's recognition behind it. It means people could be talking for all we know. And Yoshida sort of made a joke, saying, my Twitter got absolutely bombed by the Shenmue fans. I had to mute it and this, that, and the other. And we took it as a laugh. We took it as a joke, didn't we? It was the way it was. So then when the clip came out that they popped up on social media, I thought, I'm going to chuck a reply at it. I said, look, I respectfully disagree with your opinion, blah, 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 but respect the honesty. And I said, sorry for bombing your Twitter. And he just sent a little heart back. So it's all good. All well. Yeah. He took it in the right way. And nice little bridge for the Shenmue community there as well. And that's what it is. If I like people obviously get hit in the tweetathons by us, that's fine, but I think he was a good sport with all of it actually, and got a lot of time and respect for him. He's done a lot for Sony, done a lot for games as a whole, especially sort of your more indie type stuff while he was at Sony, and he has some very interesting views actually around Switch 2 and other things. I think go and have a listen to that podcast actually. I think it's very insightful overall.
Yeah, I agree. He's sort of an old dog now anyway, isn't he? And like you say, he probably doesn't really dislike Shenmue and doesn't think it was influential. He probably just holds games that came before it in a high regard.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, I suppose. He's been around for a long time now, and Shenmue's sort of been and gone under his time in the video game industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he seems a good egg. He's a nice bloke. I've always found him to be quite smiley and happy, and he seems to be involved in a lot of other video game developers, and speaking to he's very high up in the industry, and he's probably respects the hell out of Yu Suzuki and what he's done to video games as well. It's maybe just that question on the day sort of hit him, and he hadn't heard about the BAFTAs giving that award to Shenmue. He hadn't heard about it, and so on the spot he's thinking like, well, it's kind of laughable to him at the time, but if he probably thought about it more, we might have got a slightly better answer from him. I'm not sure.
I'd agree with that. I think one thing that I think Yoshida is very much, he's very respectful of a lot of the developers in the industry, and likewise there's a lot of respect for him, and rightly so, I think, as well, for the work he's done across a number of years with the industry. I think I take your point that I got the impression he hadn't actually heard the news about the BAFTA and the poll and everything, so it probably would have taken him by surprise, and then he sort of caught on the hop a little bit. But yeah, I think it's not a disrespectful thing that he said at all. I just think maybe some people have seen it that way, and actually I don't. I think it's just him going, actually from his perspective there's other games that may hold a larger influence from his point of view, and that's absolutely fair and absolutely fine, and we're there to encourage that discussion. But at the end of the day, Shenmue has topped that poll, and it's done the franchise and its notoriety an absolute world of good. So all that discussion, do you know what? It's good press for us. So carry on.
Exactly. Ready to move on, Matt? We're going to have a quick music break, and then we're going to hop into just a little bit of a quiz.
Let's do it.
Sort of die down on. What's that phrase?
Bring us to close down on.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a better word for it.
Probably is.
But yeah, so here is REN'S theme from the Shenmue the Animation OST. welcome back. That was REN'S theme from Shenmue the Animation. Unusual theme, actually, for Ren there. Very much Arabian sounding. I don't know if you can remember how it sounds, Matt.
Yeah, it's interesting,
It's got like
that
a
one, isn't
Prince
it?
of Persia vibe, I thought, when I was listening to it. But yeah, something a little bit different for you. So we're going to close the show on a little bit of a quiz now, Matt. So essentially, I did mention earlier an idea I had for you based on the sort of the fully voiced nature of Shenmue, and that you can put a face to a voice and instantly think of that character, can't you? Because Shenmue's character is so unique and done so well. So I thought what I was going to do, I was going to click a random profile on Sukapass, and if you recall, it auto plays a voice file.
Yes, it
so
does, doesn't
it randomly plays them. So this is going to be quite interesting to see what these characters come out with. I haven't actually picked 20, but I'm scrolling through the list now. I'm just going to tap on one, and you're going to tell me at least the location where that character is. You might not know the name, like I say, for example, but hopefully the voice is familiar enough that we can see if you can get all 20, okay?
Okay.
And listeners, obviously, play along at home as well. I'm going to play this down the mic, so hopefully this works. It's not too loud, it's not too quiet, I don't know, or too muffled, but obviously, Matt, you'll be able to tell me in a moment. So first character, Matt.
What an unusual stone mirror.
Yeah, I actually heard that quite well. That was okay.
Who was that? Do you want me to play another one?
Yeah, if you could, the same character.
Someday, I'd like us to drink sake together.
That's Yagamishi.
Okay, well done. I don't know. I won't write the whole thing. Let me just put yes. You got it right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yes, Yamagi-san. Yamagishi-san. Okay, next one.
Oh no.
Actually, it might be the same voice actor. Let me play another one for you.
Not all Chinese people are bad.
Oh, it's Tao-san at the Chinese restaurant.
Tao-san, indeed. I won't play any more than 2, okay? So you've got to get it out with 2, just in case the first one's not brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one?
That'd be a great help. They've already paid.
That's Hisaka-san, lunches.
Hisaka-san, well done, Matt. Yes, in the box there. 3 out of 3 so far. Ooh, try this one.
Hold it, bud. I went and got it out, so at least take it with you.
Oh, that's Asia Travel lady who scams Rio. I can't remember her name, though.
I'll give you that. Etsuko.
There we go.
Oh, easy one.
What's wrong? You seem kind of blue.
That's Goro right now, it's Tom.
It's Tom, of course, yeah. How about this one, Matt?
You always look well. That's good.
Difficult one, maybe. I'll play another for you.
Every day is cold, isn't it?
I want to say it's the old lady that Rio helps, but
Might be the same voice actor, actually, thinking about it, but
it's not, though, because she
not.
only appears once at the start of the game and later on when you're looking to get the letter translated, so it can't be her. No, I haven't got a clue.
Okay, so it's Hirata-san, Tobacco Shop.
Okay, yeah, I can hear it now.
Yeah. Matt, you're still doing well. Let's try this one.
Top quality navy coats and some radical survival gear.
Oh, that's Kurita-san at the jacket shop.
Yes, well done. Kurita-san. Military surplus store.
What's the matter for you, huh?
Oh, it's got to be Mario, the pizza place.
It has indeed, hasn't it? I do think there's a good point here, you know, like you can picture these guys, I bet. Like I'm seeing the faces, but I'm pretty sure all the listeners out there can picture the guy's face.
Yeah, I bet.
Which, you know, for such a unnecessary character, he doesn't really do anything. It's just instantly recognisable, and that's what Shenmue does so well.
Just funny.
So you've got 7 out of 8 so far. Let's continue. Let me try and find a harder one for you. Try this one. play another?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, us poor people, we don't get any free time.
Oh, why do I want to think it's the guy at the greengrocers on the corner?
It is, mate. You're right. Well done. Aoi-san.
That's it.
Well done, Matt. You'll get this one easy, depending on what she says anyway.
But this kitty, see? She's all alone.
Oh, yeah. Megumi, yeah.
Megumi. Well done. Ooh. Tricky one, maybe?
Hi, what can I get you?
Play another one.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm not worried about Tom's hot dogs or that hamburger place over there much, but Bob's Pizzeria, he's a tough competitor.
Oh. Should I have a think through the shops now? Hang on a minute. Not. Oh, it's not the bread shop.
It is the bread shop, Matt. Well
There
done.
we go.
Yes. Common A. Next one.
And don't go wrecking the forklifts, or the formula have your ass.
Oh, that's Mark.
Mark, obviously, yeah. Yeah, well done, Matt. Right, I'm going to pick one of the bad guys now and see if you can figure out which bad guy it is.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you'll get this one, but we'll see.
You stupid! What the hell are you doing here?
Ah, that is one of Tony or Smith. Just trying to remember which one's which.
Nice taxi you got here. Take me on home, okay? Get
No,
a
it's
move
not.
on.
No, it's not. It's definitely not Tony or Smith because that guy.
That's a good
it's
quote,
the guy in
isn't
the
it,
hat. It's the guy in the hat. He sits on the. I can't remember his name though. He's one of the Mad Angels.
He's a mad angel.
I just can't remember his name.
I'll say no to this one, Matt, but it's
Yeah.
Harry Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have known his name myself, but if you maybe would have said he sits on the forklift, like without that quote, because obviously the quote made that
The
obvious,
quote. The quote gave me the got that thread going.
Let me see who else we can do. Let's try this one.
Hey! Yasuo! Kayoko!
Difficult one actually with that one. Let me try a different one.
Hey, is everything okay?
Wow, that's two very completely different.
Sounding ones, yeah.
You've
Yeah.
been staying out kind of late these days, haven't you?
Oh, it's one of his friends.
Trying to have a stab at least the clothing. Naoki, you got it. The guy you borrowed the motorbike off.
Yeah.
Probably is a motorbike quote in there. I've got "Don't drive too fast" or something like that.
Yeah.
How are we doing? So we're on number 15 now.
Don't fight it, babe. We'll be gentle.
Oh Christ, yeah. I can't remember his name. With the leaf in his mouth.
Come on, loser!
Enoki.
Enoki, yeah. Nice one, Matt. Enoki-san. God, there's so many recognizable characters here. You'll get this one.
I'd also recommend the ramen. The soup is
Oh.
really tasty.
Bloody freeloader.
Yep.
Wang.
Wang, I know what you mean, straight away. How about this one, Matt?
You like me that much? Let me invite you
Oh,
to
that's
hell.
Terry.
Terry, of course.
Love his voice.
I love his voice.
So good,
actually.
isn't it,
Very
in English?
deep,
It's really cool.
raspy.
Like really threatening voice.
Yeah, like he's had 20 packs of cigarettes just before he did that line. Okay, we'll try this one. You won't know his name, but I reckon you'll be able to tell me where this guy is.
Buy me a bourbon, okay?
Oh, he's in the jazz bar for the pool competition. If you win, obviously he tells you about the Heartbeats bar, and if you lose, you have to buy him a bourbon, and it costs a lot of money.
He is. It's Gilbert Flakes Got a short profile that actually just caught my attention. It says Gilbert Flakes is a civilian base worker at the US military base in the vicinity of Yokosuka. His favourite pastime is shooting pool. He often goes to the MJQ Jazz Bar with his partner Wilson to play pool for money. He is far better than Wilson, has won 12 games in a row.
Wilson needs to give up.
I think so. Let me do another female character now. There we go, we were talking about her earlier.
So, are you gonna buy this little deal?
Oh, it's the Ape Store owner.
Yeah. And last character then, Matt, I'm going to test you on. You know what? Just for the hell of it.
Oh, that's the kitten.
The kitten. So, only Shenmue is a cat noise instantly recognisable as a character, right?
Yeah.
So that's. I think you did pretty well there, Matt. How many you got? You got 2 wrong out of 20. So I think that sort of does, prove the point that with 18 out of 20, just 1 or 2 voice files of a character, random characters there, some quite obscure actually. You can pretty much picture them, tell me where they're from, tell me the name for the most part, which is something that you can't do in most games these days, I don't think. At least on that scale, you might be able to name like 10 or 20 characters in the entire game, but that's 20 characters that don't actually do a great deal to Ryo's storyline there. They just happen to be part of Shenmue 1's village. That's just 20 from Shenmue 1 if you think about the entire series. Well done, Matt.
Brilliant. Quite good. Quite enjoyed that.
Quite good fun, actually. We might have to do something similar in the future. Maybe pick out some Shenmue 2 stuff. Perhaps not as recognisable. Yeah, I was going to say there's perhaps not as many characters, secondary characters, a little bit more in the background, aren't they, in that game? But, well, not even secondary, like tertiary is the ones that I've kind of just played for you for the most part. But yeah, Shenmue 1 especially does that so well. Anyways, guys, that brings us to the end of the show. Hopefully you've enjoyed that one. Learned a bit maybe again. That's what we try and do. Try and be a little bit educational towards Shenmue, or at least just bring you some good Shenmue content at the end of the day. And yeah, Matt, I want to close us down with the typical outro and everything that you pretty much got nailed on these days.
Yes, and one day I am going to sample it and just drop it into a podcast and save my voice a little bit.
You said that on the second episode, Matt.
Yeah, but I will do it eventually. Yeah, I'll do it eventually. But for those of you who obviously listen to the show and all the rest of it, don't forget you can give us a like, share, subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and all the usual places you can find us. On Twitter, we are Shenmue_Dojo. On Facebook, Shenmue Dojo. Instagram, Shenmue_Dojo. Twitch, twitch.tv/Shenmue Dojo. Blue Sky, ShenmueDojo.com as well. See, we've got a Blue Sky account now. Threads, Shenmue Dojo. See, we've got all these social media accounts everywhere.
Wow, if you'd have recorded that, Matt, you wouldn't have had the Blue Sky one in, would it, too?
No, true. YouTube, Shenmue Dojo VOD, we're over on there as well. And I'm pretty sure we're all over the internet. ShenmueDojo.com for the main website. ShenmueDojo.com /forums for our forums. We also have a Discord server as well if you want to join in some live conversation over on there as well. And don't forget, guys, hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4 on the 4th of every month, where we are pushing to get Shenmue 4 made and a reality. As I said at the top of the show, with the BAFTA and everything around that and all the positive press around it, we can't let up now. We must hammer home that advantage, and I'm pretty sure the tide is turning, and we are going to get some form of Shenmue 4 news very soon, hopefully. But thank you to everybody who drops in on the shows, engages with the content, and also gets behind the messages that James and I are pushing, because without you guys behind it, it falls on deaf ears, and Shenmue, it just wouldn't be as alive as it is today. So thank you to each and every one of you in the community that's come out and backed this and backed what James and I are trying to do.
Thank you very much, Matt. And don't forget, guys, it's the BAFTA award-winning Shenmue now from henceforth. Right, we're going to close the show with another fan-made piece of music here now from Red Rum. This is Nightfall Remix.
Oh, yes.
Enjoy. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, guys. Have a good one.
Ah, look at the time.